Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome to the Dark Moon Fair. It's a menagerie of wonders for the whole family. In this first tent of the Three-Ring Circus, we will amaze you with dangerous demon hunters, devastating druids, ruthless rogues, and the surprising shaman. Step right up to see the fantastical creatures within. You, my friend, are listening to The Happy Hearthstone, the longest continuous running Hearthstone podcast in the history of space and time and cards. I am Guy Grumpy, the host of the show, and this is episode 207, the first part of a three-part review of Madness at the Dark Moon Fair. This episode is brought to you, as always, by lovely people just like you. Thank you so much to all of our patrons like Hubie, Eddie B, Noodle Swoop, Jalen R, Fallen Sun, and special thanks to our producers Menok and Number Theory. You can join them and get some great perks for yourself by going to patreon.com/thehappyhearthstone. I'm excited to bring a new take on the review episodes. I know these have been among the most popular episodes of the past, and I'm finding that there are a lot of work to put together, but I'm eager to share what we've done. First, we've mostly removed the numerical tag for cards. I feel like the ratings may miss on some of the nuance depending on the deck, etc. So instead, we focused on whether we think the card is playable, and if so, what archetypes you might see it in. We'll still tell and call out if the card is good or bad, but understand that there's a lot of archetypes where you'll see it and where you won't, and there's a lot of cards that we might just have to wait and see if those archetypes are actually viable. You'll also notice that instead of just one expert, like Wicked Good, we're bringing in a crew of experts. And these are all people that are part of the community that I'm already familiar with, but I expect as I get to know more of the Happy Hearthstone community, I'll incorporate more of you into these in the future. If you think you have what it takes or know someone else who does, I'd love to hear from you and have you on the show at some point. Our first show today will cover Demon Hunter, Druid, Rogue, Paladin, and Shaman. So without further ado, let's go. My Demon Hunter expert is well known to all Demon Hunter players. I really struggled with the Demon Hunter as a class when it first came out, even with the broken decks that were lighting up the charts and everybody was complaining about how overpowered they were. It really wasn't until I started pulling decks built by Draco Cat that I started to make progress with the class. So I'm really excited to have Draco Cat as the expert for Demon Hunter. Welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me, Guy. And it's an honor to be your Demon Hunter expert, as well as it's super cool that some of the lists that I threw together were the ones that were helping you find success and everything in the past couple expansions. That's super awesome.
Yeah, it's really actually been kind of fun. I was struggling so much that I built a bunch of my own decks to see what worked. All the different styles that they seem to throw towards the Demon Hunter, and did okay. It made me feel a little bit more comfortable. But once I started going to your Discord and just pulling your latest list, then I took off with it, and like I'm probably winning at 60% with my Demon Hunter packages now, and everything that I have is taken from yours. I've occasionally gone back to HS Replay and downloaded one of the most popular decks, but that drops me back to like 45%. So I always have to go back to the Draco Cat lists. I can't pump you up enough there.
Oh yeah. Usually since I play it so much, I can usually stay a couple days ahead of
Mhm.
like the cards that pivot in the way everyone else is playing, to kind of answer everyone else's decks before
Mhm.
HS Replay gets to pull that information and be like, this is trending. This one has the top win rate. Usually since I'm like, okay, I'm seeing a whole bunch of this. Why don't I try two of these instead of one? Or let me get rid of this card and put this one in right now to see if that combats this thing that's hard. Usually, I'm a couple days ahead of the HS Replay stats. So it's really cool to, just be that person that people can, I don't know, just hop into the Discord, like you said, and grab whatever's working for me and find a similar rate of success with it. Cause if it's nice to get to have that kind of, I don't know, influence on people as a person who's a deck builder or, a brewer.
Right.
So, yeah.
Yeah, no, definitely appreciate it. So would you care to introduce yourself a little bit more? Like things, how long you've been playing, what's really drew you to the Demon Hunter class, and then maybe some of your Hearthstone accomplishments?
Yes. So absolutely. My name is Draco Cat, as Guy said previously. I've played Hearthstone since the Grand Tournament age, which is a very long time. I'd never played entirely seriously though. At that point, when I was playing, it was more of just kind of like a fun little game I played on my phone or something, until probably around Knights of the Frozen Throne. Oh my gosh, Knights of the Frozen Throne. Probably until Knights of the Frozen Throne. That's where things got a lot more, I guess, serious for me in playing Hearthstone. But I hit Legend for the first time during the Boomsday era. And I kind of went through this trial period where I was in love with the game. And I wasn't a streamer at the time, but it was like I wanted to be a better player over and over and over again. That was always my goal, was, to be the best player I could be. And I fell in love with playing Hunter and Rogue. That was kind of my go-to classes before Demon Hunter came out. So when I heard about the announcement of Demon Hunter, I was kind of attracted to the way it sounded similar to both Hunter and Rogue. So I
Right.
figured, there's a lot of Hearthstone streamers out there. It's pretty hard to find your thing. And I figured if I liked playing this class and if I was good at it, I could actually be the Demon Hunter guy. And I guess I just went full force at it, and I found out that not only did I love playing it, I was also pretty talented at the style of playing. I'm most drawn to it because of I guess I find my ability as a player, and my favorite thing of viewing myself as a Hearthstone player is my ability of knowing when it's time to pivot from playing defensive to offensive,
Hmm.
through knowing whatever my opponent is playing. And like, that's the cool thing about playing Hunter and Rogue is, you're playing this, like, different kind of game plan in the beginning when you're fighting for board. But then at one point, as the Hunter or the Rogue player, you have to decide, like, okay, now it's time for you to be dead. And I don't care about whatever else you do for the end of the game. Now I just pivot to killing you. And I think Demon Hunter has the most epic versions of swinging the game back from being
Absolutely.
like, yeah, it's like, no, you're the offensive player. I'm the defensive player. Then you're like, no, not this turn. Now you're dead, and I'm the one who's winning. And I like that about the deck. Just the giant swings with who's winning and when it's time to go for the throat or save yourself.
Well, it feels like there's a lot for you to be excited about in this new set. Then, just as far as those swingy turns, so kind of excited to hear what we what we have to talk about today. But before we get there, it wouldn't be the Happy Hearthstone if I didn't ask you to share some of the happiness that you've been finding lately. So, what has been making you happy?
What has been making me happy? That's a good question. I find I'm usually a pretty happy person about most things. One thing I'm looking forward to is I live in a new apartment now, and
Oh,
I've never
congrats!
had my family visit me for Christmas before in my new apartment.
Oh,
And
nice.
yeah, and my day job, I usually fix internet for a living, so I have
Hmm.
this weird hour juggle thing with my day job where it's like I have to work on days like Christmas Eve and
Oh,
the day after Christmas, because my job is, I guess, what is the word? Like a necessity.
hmm.
Um, and since I'm working from home, it was kind of scary to like move all of the work stuff to my parents, but it's nice that like my fiance and I now get to entertain my family for Christmas in our home. And
Nice.
we've been going out buying a ton of Christmas decorations and really, being intense about it.
Going
And
all out.
yeah,
Excellent.
yeah, it's pretty fun.
I look
Um,
forward to seeing the pictures.
yes, there will be plenty of fancy pictures that look like they're from Crate and Barrel catalogs and stuff that I will post all over Twitter. So
Excellent.
looking forward to that.
All right, well then let's jump in. We brought you here to talk about Demon Hunter, so let's do it.
Let's go.
First up, we have Il'gynoth. He's a legendary 4 mana 2/6 with lifesteal. Your lifesteal damages the enemy hero instead of healing you.
Oh man, you're gonna start with my like favorite card that I can talk the most about of the set.
Oh, all
Yeah,
right.
probably Il'gynoth is one of my favorite cards. I do really like Zai as well, but this one I think you can. It is a deck a card that you could build an entire deck around, and I've done this with theory crafting thus far.
Hmm.
So I'm sure you're aware of the OTK potential concepts with this card
Right.
and like Moarg and Lifesteal, right? Like
Hmm.
where, and so we basically kind of theory crafted this deck where it's got all of the draw options, because I know we're going to get to acrobatics later. But now Demon Hunter has even more draw than it had before. And in the previous iterations of Demon Hunter, when there was an OTK deck, like in Ashes of Outlands, you were running Novice Engineers in your deck just to kind of draw through your deck really fast. But now you don't need to run Inner Demon, which kind of ruins your Outcast. You can just run like Il'gynoth, a whole bunch of Moargs, some philosophies, then all the lifesteal cards, and then just put all the draw on the deck. And I imagine you can probably just like go through your entire deck and then just, play a whole bunch of reduced Moargs that you duplicated with Zai. And I imagine this thing is powerful enough to drive an entire deck or an archetype. It's
There's
crazy.
been a lot of there's been a lot of conversations on Twitter where people are saying it's not as good as you think, but you've definitely pumped me back up. I was kind of buying into that negative hype of, oh, there's not really enough life steal, it's just the weapon and yada yada. But um, yeah,
This is
you've
what I
just pumped me
imagine.
back up.
I imagine like, okay, you're going to be drawn through your whole deck. You're going to be running like Soul Cleaves, the lifesteal, like
Hmm.
2/2, and you have Moargs and you're reducing things off Skull. You're not running Soul Fragments. So every time you Skull, things get reduced. And since you draw through your deck really fast, you'll probably have like a Warblades up and an Il'gynoth in your hand, maybe some Moargs, different lifesteal cards. And I imagine that even though it might not be as pretty as what like we're imagining as the OTK in our head, which is like
Hmm.
Moarg, I-beam, or something. Like that's probably how most people are picturing. But what you could do, and what is more realistic, is you could say, okay, my opponent's at 16 health since I've been beating them up the entire game. So I can drop this Moarg right here, and then this Il'gynoth that I reduce, and I can I-beam that. And since I already have Warblades equipped, I can play like 2 Twin Slices, and that does 8 damage now, and he gets a 6. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah,
you,
yeah.
it's flexible to throw in with a package of a whole bunch of lifesteal that you could just be like, oh yeah, by the way, you're dead.
Yeah, and for extra memes, you can tech in Silas and give him the Ash Tongue Soul Bound and hit twice while hitting the minion.
Oh
So
man, that's kind of crazy to think about too. That is kind of a good meme. Um, but yeah, I don't know if this card is good enough to make the previous iteration of Demon
mhm,
Hunter we see a lot of, which is Soul Fragment Demon Hunter. I don't know if
right.
I don't think you just throw this in there, because in that
Oh, right,
circumstance it seems very situational, where it's like, okay, you
right.
already have the Warblades up, you have other cards to give your attack, and you have this in your hand. But maybe you do. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe the payoff of duplicating your damage is just something that like the meta is slow enough that you need. Um,
Yeah.
but I'm not
Yeah,
sold
there's
on
not enough life steal, I don't think, in the soul fragment. That it's all life gain through other means. Granted, you do get some pretty big swing turns, but those cases you kind of want it for the healing,
yeah.
just to get you out of harm's way that you've allowed yourself to get into. So it'll be
Right.
interesting. Now I'm excited. I'm a lot more excited about this card, and now this whole review. Now that we've gone through the first one. Next up is the Renowned Performer. It's a common 4 mana 3/3 with Rush. Death Rattle, summon 2/1/1 assistants with Taunt.
Um, Originally when I looked at this card, I thought, okay, this is more powerful than people are originally thinking. And the longer I've looked at it, I've realized that it's not really that great for what Demon Hunter's normally doing. The things where this thing would really shine be in like against like aggro matchups, in a deck like where you're playing like as an aggressive Demon Hunter player as well, because 2 taunts as tokens can be historically kind of annoying. It's kind of like Air Raid. That card
Hmm.
is
Hmm.
it can be annoying to get through, especially if you're playing against like if you're playing as like a soul demon hunter or something, and you're like, wow, I don't have any AoE right now. I need to find ways to deal with these individual little taunts individually. I don't know though. I don't think that this card's power level is anything remarkable. It's kind of like a restless mummy, except it doesn't have the ability to remove 6 health minions, and it just leaves like a sometimes annoying board behind.
Yeah, for me, this one, the stats aren't great for 4 mana, first of all. And then the places I was thinking I would want to use it are more in the token, but the assistants don't have rush, they have taunt. So it's not even all that useful in a token demon hunter package. So I kind of agree it's a little bit lighter than I would like. If that had rush though, I think this would be a pretty incredible card.
Yeah, that would make it much better. That's a good point. I mean, the one thing that I do sometimes think about when I'm looking at this card as well is we're getting multiple 3 mana corrupt cards, Demon Hunter.
Hmm.
Which you obviously with corrupt, you want to play a card that costs more, and there are not many cards in the 4 mana slot for Demon Hunter, right? Like the only other options you have are like Marrow Slicer and Fell Screamer. I'm not going to even count
Yeah.
Soul Split because that's just a hyper specific big Demon Hunter card. But this card, if the 3 mana cards like are that you can corrupt are super good to the point where corrupting them on as close as you can to curve is really important, maybe you justify bringing this, but I think that's highly skeptical. Like that's highly conditional.
Right. Next up, another one, Expendable Performers. It's a 7 mana epic spell. Summon 7/1/1 Illidari with Rush. If they all die this turn, summon 7 more.
I mean, I really like the flavor of this card. I think it's kind of hilarious. You know,
Yeah.
I mean, and it's kind of powerful too. And you think about that, like you can potentially get 14 little Illidari people saying vengeance when they attack. That's a lot of vengeance, guy.
That
Um,
it is. Hopefully, that's not what they say.
do you ever you've heard the command the Illidari and how they say vengeance every time? It's
Yeah,
like
yeah.
is that
Surely
annoying?
they changed it up
Surely. I
when you
hope they
get
look like
14 of them.
yeah.
Oh, me too.
But yeah, I think this card's probably a meme. The
Hmm.
funniest thing that you can think about though with this, which is I don't know, it's fun. If you're holding a Blood Herald and you get
Uh,
all of this to go off entirely and you kill all of them, you just created a 5 mana 15/15. That's kind of
that's
nuts.
true. That's true.
It's really
Um,
crazy.
it's really I think it's too situational, especially at 7 mana. That hopefully you're gonna have other things on the board, and it doesn't really have the synergy with the other token parts other than the one you mentioned, um, because you
Right.
want that other one on. If you only can summon 6 of them, then it doesn't trigger again, because it's kind of like the Magtheridon, right? That it has to be there for it to die. So
Guy, have you ever
oftentimes,
heard
I don't
my
think you're getting more.
sorry, go ahead. I didn't mean
No,
to
go
interrupt.
ahead. That was
I
it.
was gonna say, have you ever heard my spiel as to why token Demon Hunter doesn't work, but like token Shaman and Druid works? Like
No.
because okay, it's gonna be really obvious when I say it, but it's because the Demon Hunter doesn't have an actual finisher for creating a board of tokens. Like if you leave a board of tokens open for a Druid, they buff all of the minions to
Yeah.
the point where
Hmm.
you can't kill them, and or they Savage Roar and you're just dead. Um, and Shaman's got Bloodlust, which is insane. Also, you know. Um,
Hmm.
what we have in Demon Hunter is the Naga, what is it called? The Wrathscale
That
Naga,
scale. Yep.
which has anti-synergy with itself because it says when a minion dies, deal 3 damage to a random enemy, right?
Hmm.
So like not only if you're trading in all these tokens with rush into your enemy's board, you can't guarantee them to hit the minions or hit their face. So
Right.
most of the time when you're setting the situations, you just roast their board and then have tokens left that aren't dead.
Right.
Yeah.
That's a good point.
It's just not worth building a deck around this situational moment that isn't even that great. So that's the
Although
problem.
there are some new neutrals that could. I don't know. I'm still always trying to experiment with tokens. I don't know why it is, but that makes perfect sense, and that's what I've run into whenever I've tried it myself. So, uh, so yeah, appreciate the knowledge. Hopefully, we'll get some support for it because it seems like they want it to be a thing, right?
You could do guy, you could make a token Highlander Demon Hunter with all these cards randomly in there because Zephyrs has both Savage Roar and Bloodlust.
Ah, there you go.
Then you make your win condition anyway, right? But then again, you're playing one ups, so that's
Right. One of lifesteal, maybe, and then lots of thought has to go into that to
yes.
make the meme.
But you're
Next,
right there. The mana cost is crazy because 7 mana in Demon Hunter is just it's worse than in
y-
most classes
yeah,
because
you
you know
hope that you've already won by then, right? Or have the win set up.
Well, that or the outcast mechanic. Like, you
Oh, right.
basically want cards to be less than skull, so that, like, if you draw, like, your mulligan hand bad and you have one card on the left-hand part of it that's more expensive than skull and skull next to it, you're not kind
Hmm.
of you don't have to wait until after you play, like, the 7 mana card to get to the 6 mana one.
Right.
It's
That makes sense.
really bad.
Or they need to put corrupt on that, and you draw three more cards, and they get reduced by four more or something.
Ooh, I like it.
Stilt Stepper is an epic 3 mana 4/1 with a battle cry of draw a card. If you play it this turn, give your hero +4 attack this turn.
I love this card. It has the coolest flavor. Like, you get it, right? With the whole, like, if you're walking on stilts, you draw a card, and if you can play it, you don't fall. You know, you get the attack. But if you can't play it, it's like the I guess the metaphor is like you're whiffing, you're falling off
Oh,
the
yeah. I like it. I didn't even think of it that way, and it's actually a decent amount of attack if you can pull off that extra drawn card. So you fill it with low cost things, then you should get it. Give you initiative, and I mean the 4/1 body's still not great. It's not going to survive, but I like the flavor, like you said. I like that it looks like he's walking on pixie sticks, and
Yes, they do. Barbershop holes, right?
yeah, exactly. Uh, and I think it'll be really powerful in like arena. Um,
Oh yeah, yeah. I don't. It might even be like like a card that you put into aggro demon, the new version of whatever aggro demon hunter is. Which I don't
yeah,
know if that's gonna be good. Um, like, in the meta, I don't know if it's gonna be good in against every other really good deck.
right.
Because aggro hasn't been doing super great with all the AOE in the game, but it's probably worth an inclusion in a deck that's that has a lot of cheap cards, like where it's easy to get the effect off.
Hmm.
Because if it whiffs, it's kind of bad, right? Like,
Right.
you
It'd be
put a
nice if it
3 mana
reduced it
one.
by one or something else, but I'm just asking for too much, I think, from from every card. But yeah, I think it'll be an interesting ad. I'm kind of looking forward to see how people use it and how long it lasts.
It's got to feel really good to have like a whole bunch of cards go off with that effect working out. Like,
Right.
so imagine you have like a bladed lady in your hand, which I'm sure we'll get to, which is a
Hmm.
6 cost card that costs 1 if your attack is higher than 6. Imagine it's
Oh,
like
right.
turn 5 and you like play the stilt stepper. So you're taking that risk on the stilts to see if you can get a card you can play. And then you hit a blade dance, or you're not a blade dance, you hit a twin slice, so you get that exact 6. So it's like on turn 5, you play stilt stepper, and then you twin slice, and then you drop a 6/6 Raj, and then you hit him for 6 in the face. That's crazy. But it could happen. And that's like what I would imagine feeling amazing with this card if it works. It's just
Yeah,
those
yeah.
giant payoff
And
swings for the risk reward.
and if you have a deck full of cheap cards, then 3 mana for draw a card and get 4 attack is pretty strong, even if the body wasn't there. Um, so yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing this one
Yeah.
around. Next up is a legendary Zai the Incredible. It's a 5 mana 5/3 with a battle cry. Copy the left and rightmost cards in your hand. Going back to Outcast, I guess.
Yes, I think that's where they are getting that effect from. It's not a very Demon Hunter effect, is it?
No.
It's not at all. It's like a value effect, which is kind of peculiar. The only thing that's very Demon Hunter about this is that it's the left and it's the right. Um, I think this card is like slept on, like heavily. Like, I'm pretty sure this card is at least like a 4 out of 5 on most people's rating scales. To me, I would
Hmm.
say it's close to 5 because it kind of works in everything in a certain way, right? So in that deck we were talking about before in the beginning, the Il'gynoth OTK, draw through your whole deck, have a whole bunch of lifesteal things.
Hmm.
Like, this card is amazing to run because if you hit a Moarg and reduce it, you can like be like, okay, let me have another 0 mana Moarg, or let me have another Eldrazi Warblades and a Soul Demon Hunter mirror against my opponent who only has 1 or 2 Eldrazi Warblades. Now I have 3 or 4,
Right.
which is insane. This card would potentially just win the entire game for you if you position it and hit the right cards. And it's not
And
really like you're sacrificing a lot of tempo either, because you're still developing a body that needs to be removed, because a 5 attack minion is still kind of scary.
I agree. And Demon Hunter's already used to manipulating their hand, so getting the left and rightmost cards to be usable, and then getting two cards for that you've of your choice, basically, for 5 mana is pretty darn strong. So I think we'll probably won't see him a lot early on until people figure out what they really want to use him for. But by the end of the meta, he'll be in pretty much anything.
Yeah, I imagine he's going to be in Soul Demon Hunter, Aggro Demon Hunter, and whatever meme decks people build for Demon Hunter till like the end of time now, because
Oh
he
yeah.
just kind of makes things more consistent with whatever you're trying to do, you know?
Yeah, yeah. You get your second Cthulhu and it's over.
That is so crazy to think about too. That's one thing that that's excites me about the concept of building like a Cthulhu Demon Hunter is because this guy can give you another one. You know, like you can have two. That's crazy. And oh, did you know the I before we go to the next one, do you know about what happens if you play him and you only have one card?
I would assume that you get the one card twice.
Yeah, you get a triple version of the card. So if you play this and you only
Oh,
have like one Cthulhu in your hand, you have three Cthulhus.
oh, oh, nice.
It's pretty
Um,
crazy.
so so does that give you a golden version like in Battlegrounds that has a double effect or anything here?
I hope. I hope that's what happens if you get a triple with it. It's very specific situation, but I think it's sweet that they made it so that okay, it doesn't just copy it once, but if you do
Right.
arrange the circumstance to make it so that you only have one card in hand, you'll get three of it. So
That's pretty exciting to think about. It's playable with a lot of things, so you can get your hand completely wiped down and then have a huge turn, like you said. So yeah, definitely will be used in memes, but I think it's pretty strong, even outside of memes.
yeah, you could
It's
do Blood
incredible,
Illusion one with it. And the other crazy thing I was thinking about too, it's like just imagine like you're playing aggro and your last card in your hand is a twin slice, right? So
right?
you just like you play Zai and then you just created 12 damage of burst for 6. That's pretty
Yeah,
cool.
yeah.
It's
Wow.
pretty cool.
And if you have them reduced from some other effect, then they're free, right? Because
Yep, it
it's
keeps the reductions.
so even better.
Yeah.
You referenced the Bladed Lady before. She's a rare 6 mana 6/6 demon minion with rush, and it costs 1 if your hero has 6 or more attack.
I think this is the best card in the set.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
I,
it's really crazy.
it
Um,
has initiative. It's not that difficult for Demon Hunter to get to 6 attack, so I agree. There's a lot to like here for 1 mana,
what Demon Hunter deck doesn't get over 6 attack multiple times in the game? You know,
right?
every single one of them that has ever came out, whether it's Odd Demon Hunter, Soul Demon Hunter, Aggro Demon Hunter, they all do that.
Right?
And getting a 6/6 with Rush is a minion that has instant board effect, and it'll snowball the game to probably like if you ever stick and adapt, you win usually, right?
Right.
And adapt doesn't have Rush, and you're not playing it for one man usually. So
Right.
this is better um, than the Glavebound Adept in most circumstances. And you could put this in Soul Demon Hunter as well. And now your philosophy that you get off of the wand makers, now that card doesn't suck. Now you
Uh-huh.
make another one of these.
Oh
If this is
man.
in your hand, you get two.
And possibly 7/7s then for 1, which is even better.
Yeah. So now the worst thing you could get off of wand maker in Soul Demon Hunter now has a secondary huge benefit to you playing Soul Demon Hunter, which really buffs the deck if you think about it and makes you want
Yeah,
to
yeah.
keep running wand makers. I when I was looking at how to include this card into the iterations of random Soul of Demon Hunter right now, it seemed like the best thing to do was to cut out the one Glavebound Adept that people usually run, and cut out like what was the other two cards that we cut out? I think it was like one of the pen flingers and another one of the flex cards. Then you input like two bladed ladies and a Zai. And I imagine that will
Mm,
just be like this incredibly consistent, like horribly good Soul Demon Hunter deck with, double bladed ladies and Zai as well. So
I like it.
yeah.
Next up is the Insatiable Fellhound. It's a common 3 mana 2/5 demon with Taunt and Corrupt, gain +1/+1 and Lifesteal.
I mean, the stats are pretty amazing. It's like better than Tar Creeper without being corrupted.
Right? And then you give it lifesteal, and it has synergy with some other things that are going on, so, um,
Three
it's
six taunt stats for 3 is not is really good. That is so
right.
good.
Although, corrupting it in a Demon Hunter deck's a little bit harder because there's so many cheap cards that you might have a but there's enough draw, I guess you're gonna draw into something bigger, and we'll assume that the Bladed Ladies count, for their cost on board instead of what you paid for him, right? For the corrupt effect.
I think this one has a little bit more potential to be played than even the weapon, I would say, that we're going to probably cover next.
Mhm.
Because this one, if you there's Raging Fell Screamer, right? The 4 mana 4/4, where it's like if you play this card, your next demon's cost is reduced by 2. So
Mhm.
if you have that card and you like, I don't know, coin it out or even play it on 4, you're reducing that thing to a 1 mana 3/6 that's
2/5.
corrupted.
Yeah.
And that's powerful. Like developing a 4/4 and then maybe being able to coin out a 1 mana 3/6 lifesteal taunt is a very powerful play. Um, Enough to kind of like swing a game back in another direction, whether it's offensive or aggressive. It's both in that circumstance because they have to deal with a 3/6 taunt and have to potentially deal with healing you to get through it.
True.
It's
True.
crazy.
And either healing you or dealing damage to their face, one or the other, right?
Yeah, no, I think that card has a lot of potential just because of the card that corrupts it the most easiest is the Raging Fell Screamer, and it has really big synergy with it. So, um, I don't know exactly what the package looks like,
Yet.
but yeah,
W
yeah,
It'll develop over time, right?
right.
Next up is the Fellsteel Executioner. It's an epic 3 mana 4/3 elemental minion, with corrupt to become a weapon.
This card's crazy, man. It's crazy. It's
I mean, it's even
12.
good if you don't corrupt it, right?
Yeah, it's not bad, right? Like 3 mana 4/3 is kind of like Frozen Shadow Weaver without the freeze effect, which we run, and if you're playing
Right.
against like a druid or something, you would generally in an aggro demon hunter deck, you would just, throw it on the board, freeze their face, or do whatever. It doesn't really have much of an effect, but you're just playing it for the stats. And this card has that ability. I mean, I feel like if you run this card in your deck, though, like you don't actually want to play it as a minion because it's
Right, right.
12 damage over 3 turns.
That you
Um,
get to start right away. I absolutely, the
yeah,
corrupt is the better option.
yeah, it's the most powerful. Like, I guess if you think about the mana cost in its corrupted form, without like just completely ignoring the condition that has to be met.
Mhm.
This card is the most powerful weapon that's ever been printed. Um,
Right. I mean, they even had to raise the Warriors 3/2 to 3 mana because people were complaining it was too strong. So add +1/+1 to that for the same cost, and um,
that's crazy,
it's pretty
absolutely
crazy.
insane. But yeah, the other thing is the question is though, it's like it's the whole corrupting thing. That's the hard part about this card, where we
Hmm.
have to play a card that costs 4 or 5 or 6 to turn it into that, and then is it is it super good if you're playing this 4/3 weapon on turn 5 or turn 4? And that's the most optimistic circumstances where most likely if we're corrupting it, it would be something later on around turn 6, maybe turn 7. And then what does that deck look like? Is it an aggressive deck? Is it I mean, the one thing that's very powerful with this card that it makes me think a lot is Blade Dance because
Yeah.
um, with one of the issues you struggle with sometimes when you're playing Soul Demon Hunter is making sure you have your weapon charge for the turn that you
Hmm.
need to have the Blade Dance reach a very high health minion.
Right.
And this card is a cheaper version of that exact weapon with another durability. So you have a whole nother turn to have your Blade Dance reach, um,
Makes
which
sense.
is pretty flexible. Um,
Hmm.
but yeah, I don't entirely know what package is built into this, and I wonder, and I wonder if this card is so powerful that it's the new aggressive Demon Hunter decks build around card. where
Hmm.
everything is built to just make Felsteel Executioner get the most amount of value. Because
It
it's
gets you really close to the bladed lady too, so,
yeah,
there's a lot of synergies that can be used with this. I didn't even think about the extra durability on the weapon,
for the blade
helping you with
damage.
the blade dances, so that's really great insight and kinda makes me think it's even more powerful than I originally thought. That's why we do these, to get that
Yeah.
great feedback.
I have you seen the art of the corrupted Felsteel Executioner?
No, I haven't.
It's so
I have to
cool.
check it
It's
out.
probably my favorite art in the entire,
Entire
probably in the
set.
entire Madness of Darkmoon Faire thing. It's like this adorable little skull warblade with, like, tentacles coming out of it. It looks very Tim Burton, and I love it a
Oh,
lot.
nice. Yeah, I'll have to edit that in then, so
Okay.
that people that watch on YouTube will be able to see it. Otherwise, if you're listening to the podcast, definitely go look for the corrupted Fellsteel Executioner.
It's very cool.
Next up is Fellscream Blast, a common one mana spell with lifesteal. Deal 1 damage to a minion and its neighbors.
I mean, this is gonna be coming out of wand makers whether we like it or not, guy.
Right. You're
Right?
probably
So
not
this
going to run it
card is
main, right? But it's
yeah,
not bad. It's 3 damage and 3 heal. So
it's pretty good in some certain matchups too. Like
yeah.
if you're playing a hunter or a paladin or pretty much or like an aggro demon hunter, and you find this off of your wand make, that's heal 3. Do 3 little pings. You might kill some stuff. If you run pen flingers, it's a really nice weave.
Uh,
Um,
yeah. That's a good point.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think you ever hard run it though, because I was thinking about, the best way to get those damage bursts with the lifesteal deck, like we were talking about in the beginning, like built around Il'gynoth. Um, and it made me think, like, okay, do you run Fellscream Blast in that deck as like a 1 mana spell to do damage to your opponent? Um, and then I was thinking, like, okay, you can hit your own minions with it. So if you do play Moarg, and you can shoot your all 3 Moargs. But the more I thought about it, it doesn't really seem worth bringing unless you're running like spell damage cards,
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah.
because duplicating one, like, because Moarg doubles the amount of damage that Lifesteal does. And if you're doubling one, that's 2. And then if you drop another one, that's 4. So you would need to have like a lot of things to hit with these things and a bunch of
Right.
Moargs to actually get it to the very scary amount of damage.
Good point. And there's not enough other um, direct damage spells. I mean, there are in Demon Hunter, don't get me wrong, but most of them aren't face or things like that that will make it worth adding spell damage minions as much as they want that to be a thing for everybody else. I don't think Demon Hunter is the place for it.
We have ran, what's his name? Blood Mage Thalnos
The
before.
Thanos, yeah,
And he with this card is awesome, but I don't know. Like that's
yeah,
so
yeah,
specific.
yeah. Very specific. Maybe you'll have someone build around it for memes.
Maybe.
Next up is the Throwglaive, a rare 1 mana spell. Deal 2 damage to a minion. If it dies, add a temporary copy of this to your hand.
Yeah, so this card's so hard to rate, guy, because the echo effect means that there are a lot of really broken things that people could potentially make happen with this card. And
Hmm.
I wonder if I'm seeing them or not. Um, with just thinking about like how do I like, because if you use altruist with this card, and like a pen flinger, like you can
Oh
just go
yeah.
with them. Like assuming you can hit minions with them every turn, which is the conditional effect. But that's crazy to think about, where it's like if your opponent had like a board of like 1 health, 2 health, 3 health, 4 health, 5 health, and you could just keep hitting the things. Um, you could just go like throw glaive, pen flinger, throw glaive, pen, and it would eventually like you would just be doing AOE damage to everything the entire time. That's crazy, but
Yeah.
that's so conditional. It's but
Right.
I imagine this card will come off of wand makers, and people
Exactly.
will find ways to use it in beneficial ways for themselves, and it will be a normal part of the game that we have to think about. Like, did they find a glaive, throw a glaive? Because I have 4 2 health minions on the board, and if that wand maker from the previous turn gave him a throw glaive, then that devastates this turn. Um,
And there is a achievement for using the throw glaive to kill 5 minions on a turn, so, um, there will be achievement hunters that probably hard run it just for that, at least initially, as people are trying to maximize
that's great.
their XP. So, yeah, definitely something you're gonna have to play around. It'll be interesting to see. Um, it seems like it's a pretty decent clear for pretty low cost and has such great synergy with the pen flingers in particular. That's the first thing I thought of when I saw it was, oh boy, that's just a high APM turn of pen flinger, throw glaive, pen flinger, throw glaive, pen flinger. Um, I guess you have to have enough minions though, so there's still
The one
some
the
things to
interesting
play
thing that you
around,
can
but
hit your own stuff, you know?
yeah, yeah.
That makes it,
Hmm.
like, better, I guess, like, even though you don't have to
Right.
hit their minions to get it returned to your hand, like, you could be like, "Alright, I'll kill that now. Give it back." Like
That's a good point. Hey, maybe we can use this in Token Demon Hunter to kill off our own tokens and have
Mm.
the Wrath Scale Naga actually hit face.
That's crazy. That's such a good idea, guy. So you play all the minions out, then you put the Rascal, then you use Throw Glaive to kill all your own stuff.
Yeah, there you go.
Especially if you manage to, like, weave pen flingers in between them. Whereas if you're like pen flinger, kill that token, pen flinger, kill that token, pen flinger, kill that token, because then every time you do it, you would be doing what, like 4 damage to your opponent per minion? Yeah,
All right.
it's beautiful. Love it.
Redeemed Pariah is a common 2 mana 2/3. After you play an outcast card, gain +1/+1.
So I don't know if I missed these moments of the live review streams, but everyone kind of thinks that the whole Outcast package kind of works, in
Really?
like an aggressive point. Have you seen this?
No.
Yeah. So running, people are talking about running Redeem Pariah with Lion Cutter and Dreadlord's Bite, which we're gonna see probably upcoming next. Um, and I originally looked at this card, I was like, okay, cool. It's got the River Croc body, and it's got like a worse questing
Yeah.
adventure effect. It's
Yeah.
pretty much what it is, right? Like,
Right.
um, I don't really. I mean, I get how cards that have, what is the word? Where their effect builds every turn, where they scaling cards. When cards
Hmm.
scale like this, that means things can go out of your opponent's removal reach and you can just win the game very early on. And that's amazing. I don't feel like there's enough awesome outcast cards to throw in your deck with this thing to make it that scary. However, people in the live reveal streams have been saying that the aggressive forms of Demon Hunter that they've been seeing that are running off of Outcast energy have been proven to be fairly scary and
Hmm.
fast. So that's exciting, I guess. I guess it really comes down to who's running removal for 3 health minions and can deal with these things and not. But I personally don't think this card's going to be good in the long run. I gave it like a 2 out of 5.
Yeah, I tend to agree with you just because I find I don't play a whole lot of outcast cards, and those that I do tend to be the more expensive ones, unless you discover them off of One Thief um, or any other um, specific cases that you've added them to decks for. So playing enough of them to make it better than other cards at the same slot is kind of tough. I'd rather have spells or um, or more aggressive demons, I guess, at this point, rather than run a bunch of outcast cards in the hopes that you can cast them uh, soon after playing this. So it seems a little slow for me, and same thing, just not enough early outcast cards to make it worth it. But
Right.
we'll see. We'll see if the internet thinks differently. They'll make it work and prove us wrong, right?
Yeah, it's true.
Acrobats, a common 3 mana spell. Draw 2 cards. If you play both this turn, draw 2 more. 3 mana, draw 4 seems good.
Yeah, seems really good. I mean, acrobatics is gonna get. We're gonna see a ton of this card. This card is good. And without the upside, it's an arcane intellect, which
Hmm.
Mage runs now. Yes, at its base stats, Spectral Sight's outcasted is better, I guess, because it's 1 mana
Right.
cheaper. But this card's less conditional. And the upside of it is really, really good if it's later on in the game and you're able to meet that criteria of playing those other 2 cards in the turn. Um, I think the most important thing to realize though is that there being another acrobatics in Demon Hunter, as I was saying when we were talking about Il'gynoth, it brings Demon Hunter to this level where it has a colossal amount of draw in the entire list of cards now. Like, like you can run Acrobatics, Spectral Sight, Crimson Sigil Runner, Consume Magic, Chaos Strike, Skull of Gul'dan. Like you can just put all these cards in deck and draw through your whole deck. And historically, as we've played Hearthstone, I'm sure you remember this as well, Guy. When a deck is able to draw through its entire deck really fast, that usually means it's incredibly powerful.
Yep. So we'll have Miracle Demon Hunter.
There's going to be something that's done with the ability of going through the deck really, really, really fast and then doing something really, really, really degenerate. And I don't know if that's going to involve Il'gynoth, if that's going to involve Chef Nomi and some mana burns. I don't know. But
we shall see soon.
Yeah, I think it's peculiar they gave it even more draw, and especially one that's as powerful as that one, because that one right there can keep it cycling really hard. Like imagine like you get to turn 7 and you're just like, okay, acrobatics. Then you're like, oh, cool, spectral sights. And then I'll use my other consume magic that I drew off of that. And you just like cycled through like 7 cards in a turn. And that's very possible. Yeah.
Yeah. And all of it adding to your attack makes it pretty scary for sure.
Yeah.
Cool. Dreadlord's Bite is a common 3-mana weapon for 3 attack, 2 durability. Outcast, deal 1 damage to all enemies.
Fiery War Axe with Dreadlord, which was what was that card? The Impeccable Dreadlord with the Warlock card, the 4/5 with the 1 mana burn thing. It was a Knights of a Frozen Throne card. I guess it didn't do face damage, did it? No, it's different. I think it's interesting that they're using like a demon from Warlock to be the theme interest of this card.
Right.
But as I was saying about Pariah, I don't really think this little aggressive outcast package is going to work. I mean, like the benefit of outcasting this card is you get like a 1 damage to the whole enemy thing, so it hits their face. The fact that it hits their face makes this card a little bit cooler, because if you outcast it, that's 4 face damage for 3, which is okay. I feel like this card would exist in metas where you were playing against other aggressive decks, like playing against the Paladin decks. And when you think about all the Paladin cards now that are coming out, it's all about like Divine Shields on dudes. And this card essentially takes care of all the Divine Shields on dudes. But then when you think about it and you're like, okay, I need to bring a card to get rid of all the Paladin guys and the tokens and the 1 mana cards that come out and that cheap breakpoint like Dreadlord's Bite, and you think, why don't I just run Immolation Aura? That will deal both levels.
Deal it and kill it. Yeah.
So I don't necessarily think that this card is great. I don't really. I mean, if the Outcast synergy with the Pariah and the other card is at this point that I just don't understand, where it's incredibly powerful and you can just kind of go off in this miracle way where you play a whole bunch of Outcast cards real fast that are all reduced in cost and draw more. If that works, I'm willing to say I was wrong. But
I see it as a good card, but when you compare it to the corrupt one that becomes a weapon, it's the same cost for better stats on the other one, and yeah, you have so many other weapons available to Demon Hunter. This one probably doesn't make the cut unless there's some big meta swing where the Divine Shield Paladin takes over, and then you might have this as a second Immolation Aura, but that's really heavily meta dependent. You might also see it teched into some tourney decks depending on what the most powerful
curve is.
Yeah, curves are. So I don't think it's a bad card by any stretch. It's just maybe not good enough for what we've been seeing from Demon Hunter lately.
Yeah, I feel like if my objective was to kill my opponent faster, I'd probably want to use a different weapon in Demon Hunter.
Yeah,
or if
exactly.
my objective was to control the board more, I'd probably want something different as well. So,
Line Hopper is a common 3-mana 3/4. Without your outcast cards cost one less.
The flavor in text on this card is it's pretty funny. It's there are two things demon hunters know: hopping and cutting. Is cutting in line?
I get it. I like it.
I love it.
I really like the flavor of this whole set. I think this is my favorite. I know a lot of people were excited about the Harry Potter style theme, but the Dark Moon Fair in World of Warcraft has always been near and dear to my heart. And then just circus in general is such a fun theme. I just,
Me too.
yeah. While we're talking about the themes, that's why I'm loving this set the most of all.
Yeah. My old band that I was in and stuff, like we used to theme things a lot to like carnival, circusy, like darkness, stuff like that. So this whole entire expansion is just like I feel like it's the most me Hearthstone expansion ever, and I'm glad you feel the same way.
Excellent.
Yes.
So this, I guess, is more going back to if the outcast is as strong as others have said, then this will probably see a lot of play. It's actually decent stats at 3 mana, 3/4. So, it's not going to clog up your deck as something that you would never use anyway. Really good in arena.
It's like the best of the outcast package, right? Because this one gives mana reduction, and that's always historically good. I like I said, with the other cards, I don't know if it works, but if it does work, it's because of this card. It's because of Line Hopper. This one is the most powerful one of the whole Outcast package. Where like Dreadlord's Bite, if that was 2, I would play that. That's better than Umberwing. That's 6 damage burst with an AOE potentially. But I don't know how you get to like just use all of those cards at once in a way that's going to.
Yeah.
Maybe
Well, fortunately, you don't have to be in the outcast position for it to cost less. So, you can still get some value.
Pariah is the same
We'll
way.
see.
That's notable as well. You don't have to outcast the card to get her to grow. So it's less conditional of a card, but yeah, I think it really comes down to whether or not the set is great.
Yeah.
For that.
So Relentless Pursuit is a 3 mana common spell. Give your hero +4 attack and immune this turn.
I think this is probably the worst card out of all of the ones in the set. You'd never run this, because why not just run a Twin Slice, which will have synergy with everything else you're doing in a more flexible way and be more damage for the mana. We never wanted Blur, and Demon Hunter doesn't want to hit minions. So why do you care about being immune? You want to hit their face.
Yeah, I think the idea might have been to synergize with the Il'gynoth, where you're not getting the life steal back to your face. So in those situations where you're just trying to put in the last damage and clean up their board a little bit, then the immune might be worth running. But I tend to agree. 3 mana for just a +4 that is more removal to the face. You can do better than 3 mana, 4 damage to a minion, regardless of how it's applied.
The flavor text for this one's also great. It's if you steal a Demon Hunter's corn dog, you'll get what's coming. Relentless Pursuit, The one thing that is interesting to talk about that card is it does increase the power of spell discovery cards, because that's burst damage that you can find out of a Scoundrel or like an Onyx Mage Scribe, where you're like, okay, I need a certain amount to get to where I need to get to, and this card being in the pool makes finding damage even more consistent.
Yeah, you're not gonna necessarily hate getting it. There's definitely worse cards that you could discover. So, but hard running it for sure is questionable, very case dependent.
Yeah, I don't know why you would ever do that with the options we have. The other cards would have to not be in the pool to choose this one,
Right. All right, on to the meme and the neutral that we are going to talk about. Cthulhu the Shattered. It's a 10 mana legendary 6/6. Start of the game, break it into pieces. Battle cry, deal 30 damage, randomly split among all enemies. So when you break it into pieces, it gives you 4 different pieces. that you need to play. Once you play all of them, then you get Cthulhu in your hand. The 4 pieces are the Body of Cthulhu. It's a 5 mana piece of Cthulhu. Summon a 6/6 Cthulhu body with Taunt. So that's a 6 mana 6/6 that costs 5 through the spell. The Eye of Cthulhu is a 5 mana piece of Cthulhu. Deals 7 damage randomly split among all enemies. The Heart of Cthulhu is a 5 mana spell. Deal 3 damage to all minions. And the Maw of Cthulhu, a 5 damage destroy a minion. And you have to play all of those to get Cthulhu. So what do you think of this one, and how do you think it's going to be used in Demon Hunter?
Oh, I hope that this works in Demon Hunter. Now, I'm not sure it will, because it's a pretty greedy card. I think it is the most fun old god. Even outside of Yogg, which allows you to spin the wheel, which is pretty exciting as well. But
Right.
this one, it's like, you shuffle all the pieces and you find them. Demon Hunter can last a long time without dying. And one thing Demon Hunter doesn't usually need to do is find more burst damage. But the thing Demon Hunter also got now is Zai, where you can duplicate a card in your hand. And I feel like people will really enjoy running Cthulhu in Demon Hunter, whether or not it works, just for the ability of consistently duplicating Cthulhu. And that's kind of exciting. Not many other classes have that ability to copy the card in hand, that they want, other than like maybe Druid. And that package probably would be so much harder to weave into Druid with the other cards they need to run. So,
and you draw enough that you'll be sure to get all of the pieces and get them active quickly.
Yeah. I'm definitely going to have a good time trying to make this work. I don't know if it's going to be incredibly powerful, but I know that I will spend a long time trying to make Cthulhu Demon Hunter work. But I think if any old god or if any of the neutral, like legendary cards fit into the Demon Hunter deck, it's either going to be Cthulhu or it's going to be Yogg. Yogg, because you often play more than 10 spells in Demon Hunter, but at the same time, Demon Hunter cares so much about like hand management that you don't want a 10 drop, because drawing it early on can just wreck your whole hand management game up. But at least this card, even though it's a 10 drop, you only have 5 drops in the deck until you create Cthulhu. So for the entire perspective of the game, where you care about, being able to do hand management, it's not a 10 drop card. It's not a 10 drop card until you played all the other ones. And then at that point, you're probably in a situation where you can play a 10 mana card. So
makes sense.
Yeah.
And there's also an achievement for killing your opponent from full health with Cthulhu the Shattered. So more of a reason to run it. I'm sure we're going to see it in a lot of different classes, but Demon Hunter seems like one. You've inspired me. I'll probably try it with your deck, your Cthulhu deck first, just because of how much success I've had with it.
Fantastic.
All right, well, that's the end of the Demon Hunter cards. Draco Cat, I really do appreciate you joining me here today and going through this, sharing your expertise. Any final thoughts? Like, how can we get in touch with you if we want to tell you that you're very right or very wrong about any of this? Please share.
Oh, well, I stream on Twitch every weekday at 8:30 a.m. Eastern time. So you can always visit me for Vengeance for breakfast and tell me what you think. Other than that, though, I don't really have much I need to comment on or mention. I just want to say thank you for having me on as your Demon Hunter expert today. Mr. Grumpy, I appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah, so you also do write articles on your Discord and on Reddit, right? So there's other places that we can find you and find the information. I think people are going to want your deck lists. I recommend his Discord. You can find that by going to his Twitch and running the commands or looking at his panels. But we'll also include links in the show notes if that's okay, Draco.
Yes, please link the Demon Hunter Discord. We have a very, very awesome Discord community, and I'm happy to link that. So
perfect. Yes. All right. Well, thank you again, and have a fantastic day, and good luck with the new expansion. My Druid expert today is Flying Kraken. Welcome to the show.
Nice to be on the show. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, would you care to introduce yourself? Things like how long you've been playing, what draws you specifically to the Druid class, and then any of your Hearthstone accomplishments?
Yes. Hi, everybody. I'm Flying Kraken in Hearthstone, and I've been playing Hearthstone since 2013 in the open beta.
Oh wow.
Uh, the Druid class was something I was drawn to because I played WoW, and I played Druid and
Ah,
WoW a lot, and also it was the class that ramped and played big minions.
hmm.
And when I played other card games, I also did similar things.
Makes sense. So it's just a really familiar style
Yeah,
then, and um, I think the ramp is something that kind of is carried over from things like
yeah,
Magic
because
and stuff that I always
I'm a
enjoyed.
former Magic the Gathering pro. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Oh,
that's
okay.
where I came from. Yeah,
Nice. So we've really gotten expert in card games in general as well as Druid. So that should be really insightful. I'm looking forward to it. But this wouldn't be the Happy Hearthstone without asking you to share some of the happiness that you've been finding lately. So what's been making you
oh,
happy?
just a new set coming out. I enjoy the fall time because the weather. Um,
Yeah. And where are you based that the weather is nice?
Southern Alabama.
Oh, okay. Yeah, so it's cooling off a little bit finally, and um, yeah, I love the fall as well. I'm up in Portland, Oregon area, so it's a little rainy now, but still the colors changing and things are part of my
Yeah, the
favorite time of
weather
year
we like
for
it around
sure.
here when it gets fall because it goes from being 195 degrees constantly to about 75.
The
Yeah.
perfect weather, right? So I got to ask, do you wear a sweater in 75
No, I
degrees?
don't actually own a lot of
No,
cold weather clothing.
right, right. But when my sister lived in Texas, then she lost her cold bloodedness, I guess, and would start to wear her sweater when it got to like 75, 80 degrees. And we're like, that's hot. But anyway, let's jump right in. We're here to talk about druids. So let's start with Kiri, Chosen of Elune, a legendary 4 mana 2/2 minion with a battle cry. Add a solar eclipse and a lunar eclipse to your hand.
So Kiri is very interesting because the body itself on the minion is not very good.
Hmm.
So it's almost kind of laughable.
Especially for 4 mana.
Yeah, so that makes the whole card's value based upon what it creates. And I have pretty high opinions on the eclipses.
Hmm.
So I think this card could be very flexible on a lot of druid decks.
Hmm. So let's go look at what those eclipses are then. So starting with the lunar eclipse, it's a 2 mana common spell. Deal 3 damage to a minion. Your next spell this turn costs 2 less.
This card to me is possibly the best druid card of the set.
Oh wow.
It's very good. It's very flexible. It does what it does. Like it doesn't do anything ever shiny, but it's like the glue of the deck.
And
And you're gonna slot this in a lot into a lot of decks just because it does its job very well. And you're never at the end of the game gonna say, "Oh, this is the reason. This is the reason why I won the game." But it's always gonna help you get there.
yeah, I mean, you basically it's a 2 mana deal 3 damage to a minion, which is not bad. And then having it have a bonus effect on top of that, and you could possibly have 3 of them with the Kiri. So
And it's gonna make a lot of your turns more efficient. Um, because a lot of the problems with ramp decks with Druid is that you have to take the entire turn off the ramp.
mhm.
And so now you can cast this, kill their minion and overgrowth,
Oh yeah,
or cast this and wild growth, earth, or
or cast the solar eclipse this and go from there. So the solar eclipse is a common uh, 2 mana spell. Your next spell this turn casts twice.
yeah, this card's a little bit more interesting. I don't like the ability of the card is powerful, but I don't think they're going to be playing a lot of copies main deck unless you're a combo deck. You
Hmm.
may run one, and have the second copy come from Kiri,
Hmm.
because you can do so much with this. It's like the early game, if you have 6 mana, you can double ramp, or in the late game, you can cast any big spell for twice.
You're obviously a druid player when you're saying in the early game with 6 mana.
Yeah, that's our early game, I guess.
Next up, we have Guess the Weight. It's an epic 2 mana spell. Draw a card. Guess if your next card costs more or less to draw it.
So this is a very like funny card.
Hmm.
Um, I think it goes very well, specifically in Big Druid, a deck we haven't seen popular in a long time, but I think can make a comeback with the set.
Hmm.
Because a problem on the old Big Druid was they didn't have any card draw, and they tried to play Overflow, but they weren't playing a lot of cards from their hand, so they wouldn't have enough room to overflow in general.
Hmm.
And this allows them to cheaply draw cards. Yeah.
Yeah, not that Druid needs a lot of help in drawing cards, but it is pretty early. And like you said, in a big Druid deck or an Embiggen deck, then if you have this early and you can draw something, usually guess correctly, right?
Yeah, it's probably the easier if most of your deck is pretty big, I guess.
Yeah, and possibly getting 2 cards is,
It's a little fun aspect too, little carnival game.
yeah, and there's an achievement for using Guess the Weight frequently. So
Oh, there
uh,
is.
yeah. So for those achievement hunters out there, you're gonna get comfy with this card and make sure that you guess it correctly as often as you can. Next up is Greybow. He's a legendary 5 mana 4/6 taunt with Death Rattle. Give a random friendly minion Death Rattle, summon Greybow.
So this card, I think, could see a lot of play, but I'm not exactly sure in what deck. Like the stats and the mana costs are pretty good for what it does,
Hmm.
but like obviously, if you want to use its death rattle to the greatest effect, you need to be playing a lot of things. And yeah,
It's not hard for Druid to get a nice big board either, though, that can hide behind the taunt. So, and
I mean,
having the recursion, then it's pretty good.
we still have Trent support,
Yeah,
so maybe.
it's kind of a shame he's not a treant himself, but
I don't really understand why Trent's not a minion type.
yeah, I think they talked about it once before, saying that they just want to keep it consistent as all treants are 2/2s and stuff like that. So that's probably part of it. But he sure looks like a tree.
I would think so.
Next up is the Fizzy Elemental. He's a rare 9 mana 10/10 elemental with Rush and Taunt.
So I think this card may seem a little lackluster on its face to some people, but I think it may play an important part of Big Druid going forward.
Hmm.
Because I think Big Druid is going to be able to play N'Zoth, and this is something really good to get off N'Zoth.
Yeah, he's and he's got initiative. Probably takes out a minion on the turn that you play it. He protects your face, so even if he doesn't take out a minion, then right away, then he protects you from other things. He's a little
Yeah,
expensive with 9 mana, but Druid gets there so fast that it could be a huge early game at 8 mana for a
yeah.
Druid.
He protects. He attacks. He comes back.
Yeah.
Like yeah, he does everything.
Next up is the Cenarian Ward. It's an epic spell for 8 mana. Gain 8 armor. Summon a random 8 cost minion.
So this
Kind of
is
seems.
one of those highlight cards that's set for Druid.
Hmm.
I guess. You probably gonna see this in some form of spell Druid and Big Druid. Big Druid had this problem where they would play their big minion but have no way to stay alive, and 8 armor is a lot.
Yeah, it sure is. Especially if you can get it for free off of Kael'thas or something like that.
Also, 8 cost minions are like the best random minions you could get, as we saw with like Mana Giant and Conjurers.
That's true.
Mhm.
It seems like Warrior had one that was very similar to this, but only 4 armor and a 4 cost minion in a previous set. So it's kind of interesting to see that the same mechanic creep into Druid.
Right.
Next up is the Fair Arborist. He's a common 3 mana 2/2 with a choose one effect, draw a card, or summon a 2/2 treant with a corrupt effect of do both.
This card for me is hard to evaluate. It's like a 3 mana 4/4 is not bad. A 3 mana draw 1 is not bad. But like, where is this going? And it could be in token, maybe some kind of mid range druid.
A treant druid, make it there's still
Yeah,
treant support.
it makes a trend. That's right. Yeah.
And honestly, it's going to be easy to corrupt too. So you're more likely to get both effects anyway, which then makes it pretty strong, I think.
Yeah, I think the 3 mana corrupt is a good mana cost for corrupt and druid
Hmm.
because a lot of times they're just ramping the 4 and playing overgrowth.
Yep, exactly. Moon Touched Amulet is a 3 mana rare spell. Give your hero +4 attack this turn and corrupt and gain 6 armor.
So this card is very reminiscent of the other 3-drop card from the old God set.
Hmm.
I don't remember the name of it, but it was 3 mana, get +4 attack or get 8 armor,
Hmm.
and you would use it with Fandral to do both. And while this is only 6 armor, I think the corrupt is a lot easier to do than do both.
Hmm. Then
So I
have
think
to
this
have a
could be
separate card. Yeah. And
yeah.
again, at 3 mana, then it's easy to corrupt. So do you think it'll see a lot of play? I don't recall the old spell really seeing
Uh,
a ton.
it was a pretty staple in Druid for a while,
Oh, okay.
just because it's a way to stay alive.
Yeah.
And I think this card is pretty important for maybe like a big Druid or maybe as a one of in some spell decks.
Makes sense, and it does give you initiative, so you can attack with it. And I really see this. This one was just kind of screaming at me as a duels card that it'll be in a lot of buckets and kind of an add on to whatever else you're getting. And um, so I see it used a lot there. Um, I was kind of figuring not as much in standard, but like you said, it gives you survivability. So we'll see.
Yeah, and the survivability just allows you to take turns off and play big things.
Mhm. Next up is the Umbral Owl. It's a rare 7 mana 4/4 beast minion with rush, and it costs 1 less for each spell you've cast this game.
So I like this card a lot.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it seems like another corridor creeper in a way. Yeah,
So, what cost do you think you'll normally be casting this at then?
0.
Oh, really? You think you're
Yeah,
going to
because
play 7
yeah,
spells
because
before you get it?
these spell druids and stuff like that, they have like nature studies, the new lunar eclipse and you're casting 3-4 spells a turn.
Oh, mm-hmm.
And when you go off with Kael'thas and you play Overflow and you Innervate and you Lightning Bloom, when you kill their thing and then you Survival, and this thing's a 0 mana 8/8 rush. I don't think a lot of people have been trying to put this in a lot of decks. I think specifically this goes in a Kael'thas deck
Mm-hmm.
or a survival deck.
Interesting. So, have you already theory crafted around it? I'm curious to check your decks out then.
Yeah, I've put it in a lot of Mount Seller Kael'thas
Oh,
survival
mhm.
decks. I also think it just like slots into the old Druid decks anyway.
Nice. All right. Well, we'll get your links at the end. All right. So we're on to some neutrals then. You've chosen the Strong Man, who's a common 7 mana 6/6 taunt with corrupt. This costs 0.
So I think this could see play in a lot of different Druid decks. I think that sorry. I think that there's going to be a lot of Druid decks that are just playing free things.
Mm-hmm.
Like this card's going to be free a lot from Guardian Animals or Cenarian Ward, or if you play any big druid minion like Fizzy Elemental, and like there's going to be so much free stuff to play in druid. It kind of worries me a little bit. You're going to have like Strongman, Anubis Defender, Umbral Owl.
You ramp up, but then don't need mana.
Right, basically, you just play one big spell and you're playing a bunch of free things.
Interesting. This is the first time I've really thought of Strongman as especially useful, because I've just been frightened by the cost and being able to corrupt it. But it makes sense that you mentioned a lot of great cards that are higher cost that you would play in Druid. So
And survival.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a little late for survival, because it's still going to cost the 7. But I guess again, if early game in Druid is 6, then maybe that's not the case. Carnival Clown is an epic 9 mana 4/4 with taunt. Battlecry, summon 2 minions of this. Corrupt, fill your board with copies.
So this guy is not bad on his own as 12 stats over 3 bodies, and it has taunt, so protects you. But the deck that people were testing this out in is like a Yasharaj Druid, where you play survival and you get a board full of 8/8s and strongmen, and then later in the game you can play Yasharaj and get them back.
But when they come back, they're just 4/4s, though, right? They don't maintain.
Right, but if you still fill your board, you're gonna have Yasharaj and a board full of 4/4s.
Yeah.
So you're gonna have like close to 30 something stats.
Yeah, and there's achievement for it to fill your board with the Carnival Clown. So I definitely think he's going to see a lot of play, even at 9 mana for 4/4s, or assuming you have the board space for 12/12 in stats. He's just a fun card that kind of protects you at the end of the game and gives you that last chance to survive. I'm kind of excited to play him in pretty much every class. So
yeah.
And last, N'Zoth, God of the Deep. Legendary 10 mana 5/7 with the battle cry, resurrect a friendly minion of each minion type.
So when they spoiled the old gods, I'm pretty sure Druid might have been the last class people thought N'Zoth could go in.
Yeah.
But Big Druid actually takes advantage of his card very well, because you have Fizzy Elemental as the elemental. You have Emerald Explorer and Ysera the dragon. You have the new Amalgam that can be any type. And you have what's the Reborn minion for Druid? The taunt 6/8.
Yeah, the beast.
The beast.
The untargetable one. Yep.
Yeah, so that's a beast in the deck.
What Murloc would you run?
I mean, the Amalgam's can be a Murloc too.
Well, I figured the Amalgam's going to be the totem. There's an achievement to get 6 different minion types from N'Zoth, so got to start thinking about those too.
Yeah, because the deck could also run a mech, so you could have the Amalgams be your totem and your Murloc. If both die.
Probably not enough to run the totem Treant.
Yeah, get that 2/2 back.
Yeah.
It has Rush too, probably, maybe.
Maybe. And that's all that we had to talk about. What are your thoughts overall? Does anything change for Druid? Are there new archetypes that you're expecting to pop up? Or is it more just support for old archetypes? And just general thoughts.
I think that there's going to be some people trying new decks like me with Yasharaj Druid, N'Zoth, Big Druid. I don't know exactly if the power level of these decks are good enough to overcome the past Druid decks like Guardian Animals and Kael'thas, because those decks also got new cards. So I'm not really sure, but I do think Druid got a lot of like effective cards in this set.
Yeah, I'm definitely looking forward to some of the Eclipse decks. I don't know that they'll be called Eclipse decks, but I just feel like you can build around those more than most cards that we've seen, and
Yeah.
so I'm kind of excited to see where that goes.
I think when slotting those cards in, they're going to be like, oh, I'm going to build a Druid deck. Okay, first we put in the Eclipse cards, you know.
Yep. hmm Well, that kind of wraps up our Druid. Thank you so much for being part of this and doing the review with me for the Happy Hearthstone. Can you share where people might be able to find you and get your new decks and make comments to say how right or wrong you were?
Well, on Twitch, you can follow me at Flying Kraken HS. And on Twitter, you can follow me at Kraken Flying.
And in both cases, we'll put that in the show notes so you'll be able to find it a little bit easier. Um, Thanks again, Kraken. Much
Thank you
love,
for
my
having
friend.
me.
My rogue expert today is Pocket Aces. Pocket, welcome to the show. Would you care to introduce yourself? Like how long you've been playing Hearthstone, what draws you to Rogue, some of your Hearthstone accomplishments, etc.
Sure, sure. Thanks for having me. So I have been playing Hearthstone for, I guess, a little over a year. I'm 14 months now, so hasn't been too long, but I have
Wow.
dove headfirst in. So I play every day for multiple hours. I think, yeah, a lot of people know that I stream. So what drew me to Rogue specifically, though, is I think Galakrond's Awakening was when I really started getting into it, but there's something about just like the versatility of the class. It just feels like you're almost never stuck, right? You have the ability to either
hmm
discover things or just like generate resources sometimes out of thin air, which I know opponents don't like all the time. But it's just a class where I feel like it gives me a lot of options. And so for someone who's like a pretty risk averse player, that's a pretty appealing kind of trait.
Absolutely. So it wouldn't be the Happy Hearthstone without asking you to share some of the happiness that you've been finding in life lately. So what has been making you happy?
Yeah, yeah. So I have two quick things. So the first one is something that just happened last night. It was absolutely amazing. I was doing a stream with Warshack. We were co-oping Galakrond Rogue, and like the Play Hearthstone Twitch account just gifted 100 subs in my chat, and it was an
Awesome,
absolutely
man.
amazing experience. So I was really really grateful for that. But also just kind of outside of the Hearthstone and like video gaming world, so my sister had. What will now be my third niece, I guess, a few months back, but I haven't been able to see them because of COVID and everything. So I
Mhm.
did get the chance to finally meet my newest niece
Oh,
recently, and
nice.
so that was definitely the highlight of my past like month or so. So
Well, that's really exciting. New family members and just getting together with family in general in these troubling times
yeah.
definitely can bring happiness. And congrats on those 100 subs. That's great. I know they're giving away,
Thanks.
what, 6,000 between
Yeah,
last
something like
Thursday and
that.
Tuesday. So,
Yeah, I just didn't expect it to be me.
well, I'm glad it was. You definitely deserve it. You're a great streamer and a great
Oh,
player.
thanks.
So,
Thank you.
but we're here really to talk about the rogues. So let's
Mhm.
jump right in.
Yeah.
The first card that we have is the Prize Plunderer. He's a 1 mana, 2/1 rare pirate minion with a combo deal 1 damage to a minion for each other card you've played this turn.
Yeah, so I actually don't think this card's good. I know that it's gotten like a decent amount of attention from the rogue set, but I think that this card's actually pretty bad. And the reason is because like I don't think that there are enough cheap rogue cards to really make this effective as hard removal. Almost always after you play this card, like maybe you'll do like 5 damage or 4 damage or something. And if it's a bigger minion, you're probably still going to have to trade into it anyway. I just think that we have as a class more effective removal options than this plunderer card. And then the second thing that makes this kind of uh, tricky to play, in my opinion, is that we don't want to be using our combo cards to chain and activate removal. We want to use those combo cards to have bigger plays like um, Edwin and Questing Adventurer, right? Like we want to use that backstab, shadow step, prep. We want to use all those cards to like help build out our big tempo minions that benefit from those 0 mana cards, right? So like playing all those cards just for the sake of removal just doesn't feel like it's a super strong play with regards to like the other things that we could be doing, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that makes total sense. I think I was seeing it less as one that you need to throw a lot of cards into. That it's just a good early removal option that later on you can use towards your other combos. I agree.
Mhm.
It's not though. It's not super strong, and unless you're gonna try to build a pirate rogue, which isn't really in vogue right now.
Yeah.
He's he's kind of situational.
Mhm. I
Uh,
agree.
next next up, we have the Grand Empress Shez or Shekzara. Shekzara. She's a legendary 6 mana 5/7 with a battle cry. Discover a card in your deck and draw all copies of it.
Yeah. So I think that this card is pretty good. I think it's going to be a lot better in constructed than it will be in standard. I think that as I was rating them, I gave this a 4 for constructed and a 3 in arena because I think it requires a lot of coordination and you just
Hmm.
don't get that level of synergy in arena. But I think it's outright a pretty good card because independent of the other support that they have for this kind of shuffle archetype in this set, it's just good to be able to search for answers and thin out your deck, right? Like I think
Hmm.
one of the problems that Rogue has as a class is they don't have access to super reliable draw all the time. So this is just a form of draw that allows you to again search for answers and hopefully
It's
generate the right resource that you need in a particular moment.
yeah,
Right?
more like a tutor than a draw, even because you're discovering it.
Exactly. And so this does obviously also have, I think what's drawing a lot of people's attention is the synergy with Tog Scheme or Shadow of Death, or which is the card that shuffles the shadows into your deck, and
Hmm.
then once they're drawn, they summon the minion that you casted it on. Um, that one's a little harder because you really have to manipulate your deck such that you are either guaranteed or at least extremely likely to discover that minion, right? To discover either the shadow or the minion that you talk scheme, right? And draw all of
Hmm.
those. So I think there needs to be like this shuffle archetype with Shekzara is missing just one card that gives you the ability to kind of manipulate your deck in that way. But I don't know, maybe somebody will find this missing piece. But in my mind, I think that it's a lot harder to use with those cards for now.
I'm actually really excited to try it with a Mogul cultist and
All
get
right.
that all shuffled in, and then you can even play a secret passage late and play this and have room in your hand for 7 cultists, and uh, it could be a lot of fun. So
Yeah, definitely.
definitely some combo plays. I'm kind of interested in the shuffle rogue archetype
Mhm.
possibility, but yeah, I think that it's just so strong as an aggro deck now that it's going to be hard to transition because those that are playing, it'll be interesting to see what people come up with.
Yeah, absolutely.
The Ticketmaster's a rare 3 mana 4/3 with a death rattle. Shuffle 3 tickets into your deck. When drawn, summon a 3/3 plush bear. And this is
Yeah.
when any one of them is drawn, it gives you a 3/3 plush bear, right? Not you have to draw all three of them.
Yeah, exactly. So it would operate the same way that like Shadows from Shadow of Death does, or Waxadread's Candle, or something like that. When it's drawn, it's uh, you get the effect. And I think that this card's pretty good. I think, um, funny enough, I know in the last card we were talking about it being better in constructed than arena. I actually think this card's probably better in arena than constructed. And the reason is because I think it gives you access to basically free tempo.
Hmm.
At some point in the game, the only reason it wouldn't be like a straight up 5, I think, is because you obviously just don't have control over when those cards come out, right? Like when the tickets get drawn, and
Hmm.
so it's kind of unpredictable in that way. But overall, like it's pretty good stats for its cost. Like a four
Hmm.
three body on a 3 mana minion's pretty good. Just like we see with like Frozen Shadow Weaver and stuff like that, it trades really well. And definitely on the aggressive end, it's pretty good in some of the archetypes that Rogue is already developing in this meta. I think people again are thinking about that synergy with Shekzara, the card we just talked
Yep.
about, and I think I have the same problem with that synergy as I do that I've with like Tog Scheme and Shadow of Death, where again you don't really have the certainty that you're going to discover the plush bear. It's more like a high roll potential than it is really kind of a dependable strategy. So, like I said, overall, I think the card's good. I think it'll be better in arena, like I said, than it will be in constructed. It doesn't really have good synergy with any of the other archetypes that Rogue has. It's just kind of like a good minion. I think people will start to experiment with it and just like see how it does. But overall, as deck lists optimize throughout um, the like couple months of the meta, uh, it'll probably find its way out of most decks.
I tend to agree. I mean, it's still fun, and the bear looks great. So there'll be people that'll play it still for memes, and I think shuffles they're really pushing it as an archetype. So I think
Mhm.
there'll be some that are viable, but they probably won't be top tier decks, and all the best players will probably migrate away from this back
Yeah,
to a stealth package or something. But definitely one
yeah,
to keep an eye on and be interested in.
for sure.
So Tenwu of the Red Smokes, a legendary 2-mana 3/2 with a battle cry, return a friendly minion to your hand. It costs 1 this turn.
I mean, I think everybody is in unanimous agreement that this is a 5 out of 5 card, no matter what way you slice it. This card is potentially the best card in the entire expansion. It's absolutely broken, and I can almost guarantee that it'll get nerfed at some point. So the first thing I thought of when I thought of the first thing I thought of when I saw this card immediately was Kronks. This enables you
Oh,
to play
mhm.
Kronks 3 times in a turn if you want, because you play Kronks for 6 mana, you play this for 2 mana, get Kronks back to your hand for 1, so then you play it again. So then you're at 9 mana. But if you shadow step this, it only costs 2. So if you shadow step it and you play it one more time, you get Kronks for 1 mana again. So that's 10 mana and you can play 3 Kronkses, right? That's a 15
Oh, that's
damage
crazy.
combo, which is pretty disgusting. But even outside of that, I mean, like, if you have any good battle cry on the board, Evil Miscreant, if you have like Frozen Shadow, like literally anything, like you're getting so much value from this card. And I think that this is going to find its way as an auto include into basically every rogue deck because I
Yeah,
mean half of the minions in rogue are just really good battle cries. So
right.
this card's going to be played a lot.
I I definitely agree with you. I'm most excited for this one in hoping to draw an old god with uh with the Galakron,
Yeah.
and then bouncing him back into your hand and just having a really crazy humongous swing turn that will
Yeah,
show up
that's
on all the
another
highlights.
application for sure. Especially if you play Polkelt, and then you play
Oh,
Galakron,
right,
like it's super possible.
right. Malevolent Strike is an epic 5-mana spell. Destroy a minion, but costs 1 less for each card in your deck that didn't start there.
Yeah, so the thing about this card is, again, this is going to fit into that shuffle archetype that we were talking about, but I just don't think it's a good card. I think this is probably the worst card that Rogue got in this expansion.
Oh, wow.
But to be fair, they got like a lot of good cards, and that's because uh, even if you were running this shuffle archetype, right? Not only do you have to shuffle cards in to not pay 5 mana for it, but then you have to kind of hope that you don't draw those cards before you need to play this card. So it's just like really uncertain. And again, like I mentioned before, I'm a pretty risk averse player, so I like to
Mhm.
have certainty in my removal. And I think that the class overall specializes in having very efficient and effective hard removal. And
Like
so that's the
Assassinate?
reason why we don't. Yeah. Well, well, no, that's what I was saying. That's why we don't run cards like Assassinate, right? Because like we just have better removal options.
Right.
So I it has the potential to be good. Um, I think it's one of those cards I need to see in practice more, but I think in practice it's going to be underwhelming because people are going to expect to get this super cheap removal, but are going to be disappointed because they're like, oh shoot, I haven't shuffled anything into my deck, or oh shoot, I already drew the things I shuffled into my deck. It's just going to be kind of burdensome. Like just run coerce. Like
Right. Although this will get reduced cost for every bomb in your deck, so there's that too.
yeah, that doesn't
Not a
really
reason
help
to play
though
it.
because well yeah, I was gonna say because Bumware's not playing that many minions anyway,
Right,
so
right.
it's not that good there.
Cloak of Shadows is a 3-mana epic spell. Give your hero stealth for 1 turn.
Yeah, so I this is the only other card in the in this rogue set that I gave a 5 out of 5. Like this card's absolutely gross, and I think it's even more gross because it's an epic and not a legendary. It's like you can't not being able to take damage for 1 turn is immensely helpful for rogue, and that's because there are so many games because of rogue's really good balance of offense and defense, like with its hard removal versus its aggression. You end up in a lot of situations where if you could just get one more turn, like you're able to swing things back into your favor. And so um, it allows you to take these kind of like clunky setup turns and then just play this at the end and then just have a pop off turn after that. And there's very few like spells that hit the enemy hero or that hit you as a hero without using the target mechanic. And so if your hero can't be targeted, it's going to be and it can't be attacked by minions, it's going to be very difficult to kill you, right? So
Hmm.
it enables you to kind of like give yourself that certainty that like, hey, I don't need to try and live this turn. I can set up what I need to take a big swing turn next turn, right? Because
Hmm.
I think that's what gets in the way a lot of times with like, what's a good example? Like Togwaggle, right? And Galakrond Rogue. People are like, okay, if I play Lackey and then I play Togwaggle and then I play Wand or Crown or whatever, I have to get these things in order to win the game, right? Whereas now you could be like, okay, let me play this Lackey, let me play Togwaggle, and then let me play Cloak of Shadows, so that way I can't die. The next turn, I can not only play Wand or Crown or whatever, but then I can look for additional answers on top of that to either help me win the game or to help me just live, right?
Hmm.
And so I think that this card's going to be really good.
I agree. Just it was such a strong effect on the hero power card or the hero card um, that making it cheaper, bringing it down in cost. I mean, it's not as good as timeout, obviously, because there are still things like Cthulhu that can hit you in the face. Um,
Yeah.
and but yeah, preventing targeting definitely um, definitely helps and gives you, like you said, that swing turn potential.
Yeah.
Shadow Clone is a 2-mana rare spell, a secret. After a minion attacks your hero, summon a copy of it with stealth.
Yeah. So first and foremost, shout out to my Naruto fans who like know what shadow clones are. But other than that, so this card I don't think is very good. It's like mediocre at best. Uh, I think it slides, of course, right into that secret archetype that kind of got built out more during this expansion. But it's just really easy to play around, right? Like,
Right?
if they have more than one minion on the board, like, okay, let me just attack with this 1/2 or this 1/1, and then okay, now I'll attack with my 8/8, right? It's super easy to play around. It's uh, potentially not that helpful for you, right? Like, because even if you do summon another minion, right, it's like it, it allows you to sure to just probably trade back into the minion that already attacked anyway. So like you're not getting that much unless you have some other
Right.
form of removal for the minion that attacks. So I don't know. The one way I could potentially see it being somewhat decent is in the stealth archetype where you're like, okay, I don't have a stealth minion to activate like a Greyheart Sage or something, or to activate
Mm-hmm.
an Ash Tongue Slayer. So now I will get a stealth minion and I can now use these effects that are synergistic with stealth. But that's the only way I kind of see it being really good. But otherwise, I think it's just like a mediocre card that'll like maybe some people will play it in the secret archetype, maybe they won't. But yeah, I don't anticipate it being game breaking at all.
Yeah, I wouldn't. I'm not expecting this to be played in a secret archetype, but like you said, in a stealth archetype, I do run into lots of times when I have things that activate on stealth, but no stealth minions. So
Mm.
this gives you that possibility. Although usually in those cases, they're trading into my unstealth minions instead because they're better trades for them, and so they're not
Mm.
attacking the hero until they get something worse anyway. So
Yeah.
I tend to agree. Not one I think we're going to see a whole lot of, maybe other than maybe experimentation right up the gate.
Mhm.
The Foxy Fraud is a 2-mana 3/2 with the battle cry. Your next combo card this turn costs 2 less.
Yeah, I think I'm gonna have a pretty hot take here. I think everyone's really excited about this card and thinks it's really good. I think this card is theoretically good, but in practice it's gonna be bad because most of the combo cards in Rogue are pretty garbage. Honestly, like that's why there's no like combo archetype. Like the only good combo cards that really get played are Edwin and Evil Miscreant, right?
And
Most
if
people are even cutting
Eviscerate.
Eviscerate from their list. Well,
Oh,
yeah,
really?
like most people are, yeah, like I don't run Eviscerate in my Galakrond Rogue list. I didn't run it in my secret Rogue list. Eviscerate is a good card, but even like imagine you play Eviscerate with this card, right? Okay, so now you're getting a 3/2 and then with like battle cry deal 4 damage basically, right? Sure,
Mhm.
that's good, but that's not like some super overpowered synergy, right? I think that the best case scenario for this card is going to be high rolling Edwin. Uh, like if you have like, I don't know, turn two, coin, Foxy Fraud, backstab, uh, Shadow Step, Foxy Fraud, Edwin, or something like that, right? And then you just make some huge like that's, I just see it as like kind of hyper roll potential, and it's good because um sorry, the other situation where it's good is like turn three where you don't have a card to activate Evil Miscreant. You're just like, okay, well, I guess I'll play Foxy Fraud and then I'll play Evil Miscreant. So now you don't have to deal with that awkwardness of needing to have backstab or
Mhm.
having to wait another turn to play a one drop then Evil Miscreant. Like it's good in those kind of situations. But again, like I would just stress that most of the combo cards in Rogue are really bad. So I just don't see
Right.
this card being super effective. And then like the other ones that are good, like Wand Thief or Brain Freeze, they're already 1 mana. So like, why are we going to discount them for 2?
Right.
So yeah, I just don't think this card. I think this card's good in theory, like it's a great effect, but it needs to be supported by better combo cards.
Yeah, I guess I can see that too. Most of what you're gonna play that makes them free. They're already pretty cheap to begin with. Maybe if it was a 1 mana 1/1 with that
Mhm.
effect, then you could run it in more combo decks. But using it for 2, it costs what you would run to build up those combos like Edwin
Mhm.
and things like that. I think a
Yeah.
lot of people might just be uh, seeing the art and just loving the Volpiras and
It is
wanting it to be
amazing
good.
art. I will say that, and let me be fair. Like, I don't want to completely discredit the card. There are spots where I do think it'll be really good. Besides the ones I mentioned with Edwin and Evil Miscreant, and like more of the value or tempo rogue decks. It's really good in aggro rogue, right? Because you can
Hmm.
develop the 3/2 body and then put the eviscerate to their face or something, or you can develop this 3/2 body and then play Hook Scimitar and then deal 4 more damage to their face. So like this card has its uses. I'm just saying I think a lot of people thought this was like a 5 uh going into the expansion. I think it's going to be closer to like a 3.
It's fair. The Sweet Tooth is a 2 mana 3/2 common with corrupt, gain +2 attack and stealth.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I'm shocked that this card is a common, to be honest with you. Like this card I think is really, really good in almost every archetype. So I I think one thing that Rogue is lacking is specifically strong 2 drops, right? The best strong 2 drop that we have in like an aggressive or stealth archetype is it's like Skyvateer, right? Which is like
Hmm.
net a bad card. Like sure you get to draw a card, but a 1/3 doesn't really fit with the aggressive nature of the rest of the stealth package. And like you're getting draw anyway from Greyheart Sage, so it's like just like not really that great. The other 2 mana card I think is Ashtongue Slayer, which necessitates that you already have a stealth minion on board, right? So
Hmm.
this card's good. And I know that this isn't a true 2 drop because you would ideally want to corrupt it, but even if you don't corrupt it at all, if you're playing an aggro rogue, you could just drop this as a 2 drop and it would be fine. But if you do corrupt it, you get this immense payoff where you have a 2 mana 5/2 that your opponent most likely can't interact with outside of some form of AoE or like combustion or something weird like that. And you get to just slam 5 damage into your opponent's face. Like it removes the need to play stuff like Burrowing Scorpion because now you can get this for cheaper. And
and
then
and more
still have the same
controllable.
value.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's more controllable. And so I see it. I definitely see a combo where like you can coin turn 2, play Self Sharpening Sword. Turn 3, you're playing this and Spy Mistress, and it gets out of hand super quickly for your opponent because now all of a sudden you have what's that 5+3 plus presumably 2 if you strike with the Self Sharpening Sword. That's like 10 damage coming out in 1 turn, and that's going to be on turn like 3 or 4, right? And so I think that's going to be pretty disgusting. This card's going to be really good.
And in arena even better because you might even end up with 3 or 4 of them, and your deck
Mm-hmm.
and corrupt in arenas going to be so easy to get. Um,
Yeah,
I'm kind of excited for this one, and again, the art on the rogue cards are just like making
it's
me laugh
great.
today. Swindle. Oh, yeah, Swindle is a 2 mana
Oh boy.
common spell. Draw a
Mhm.
spell, combos, and a minion.
Yeah. So this card's really, really good. I think that this card is a probably like a 4 out of 5. I don't think it's game breaking, but I think Normally it would be a 3 in any other class. In Rogue in particular, it's a 4 because again, Rogue has so few good draw options that this just becomes extremely helpful. So again, like when I was talking about like Foxy Fraud not having good combo cards to really make it that good of a card. This is one of them that I think will be really, really good with Foxy Fraud. Right, this is so
Mm-hmm.
because now Foxy Fraud becomes a 2 mana draw, two mana 3/2 body draw 2 cards, one of which is a spell, one of which is minion. Right, which is almost, I won't say guaranteed, but it's very likely, given that the curves for Rogue tend to be pretty lower. It's very likely to give you plays for your next turn. So
Mm-hmm.
I think that this card is going to be really, really good. And I would stop just short of saying it's an auto include in almost every deck because this kind of draw potential in Rogue is so helpful because I think it's one of the places where Rogue gets the most stock.
Yeah, especially early draw. Like there are the
Mhm.
late game draws that hardly anyone plays, but yeah, being able to do it early, even as early as turn one with the coin,
Mhm.
and just fills your hand, gets you ready
Yeah.
for that turn. It's like a mini secret passage, right?
Yeah. That, and I actually think that it, going back to something we were talking about earlier, the, what do you call it? The shuffle archetype we were talking about. So
Hmm.
if you play like Shadow of Death or you get those like uh plush bears or whatever, and you play this swindle, like maybe you high roll and now you get a 3/3 body, or you get
Oh, right.
whatever shadow you shuffled in to cast, and you, that'd be awesome. So I think it definitely has a lot of potential.
On to the neutral cards. The
Mhm.
Inconspicuous Riders, 3 mana, 2/2 common, with a battle cry, cast a secret from your deck. So you think we're going to see Secret Rogue strong?
As strong as, I think people are going to try to work with this card. I think that this card is obviously going to better support the immensely built out secret archetype that Mage got in this expansion.
Hmm.
But
And Hunter.
yeah, and Hunter for sure. I think that this is going to be experimented with in Rogue because like not only did we get an additional secret to bring us to a total of, I believe, 5 secrets, um, but now on top of that, like uh I think our secrets are a little bit more variable too. So before, I thought too many of our secrets were like, I only want to play this in a particular spot.
Right.
Like we think of like bamboozle or plagiarize. But now with with the new secret that we got, Shadow Clone, it's called. That's one where I feel like I can probably play this at a lot of different points in the game. So if I do get this randomly casted out of my deck by Inconspicuous Rider, it's not that disappointing. That being said, I do think that this card's a little bit too risky to play if you're running plagiarize, because plagiarize is just
Hmm.
such a high skill cap card. Like you need to play at the exact right moment um, for it to really be effective. So I wouldn't want this casting plagiarize out of my deck, but I do think that it makes bamboozle a little bit more viable because yeah, I'd love for this to just cast bamboozle and then get a 6 drop when my opponent tries to attack it into this. So
Right.
this card could be played with the secret rogue archetype, but I thought it was just worth mentioning. But
Hmm.
it overall, it'll probably just fall by the wayside. It's just a 3 mana 2/2 body is just not strong enough.
And that's all that we had in the review decks. But if you were going to pick an old god that you think would show up in Rogue, what do you think it would be? Are you more of aligned with Yogg because it's so easy to play the spells, or
Yeah,
Cthulhu because he's just fun?
yeah. No, I think there's potential for a lot of them, but I think it's just gonna be Yogg because, like you said, it's just super accessible. Like uh, a lot of decks are already running 6 0 mana spells, right? Double backstab, double shadow step, double prep, and so that gets you more than half of the way there.
Right.
And so like I think that that's just gonna be really accessible for Rogue. That being said, like at least on a like competitive or like high
Right. Right.
legend level, I don't think we'll see that, but I don't know, it could be fun still for sure.
Fair enough. So, impressions overall for Rogue? You think well, we've talked about the Shuffle Rogue being a potential new archetype that people will try. You think there's anything else, or you think it's mostly support, or you think that Rogue won the set?
Yeah, I definitely don't think Rogue won the set. I think that we did get the best legendary. Like I mentioned, Tenmu is absolutely busted and will definitely get nerfed. But I think that it's again mostly support for existing archetypes. I think people will try to find their way into this shuffle rogue archetype, but in the end, I think that there's just not enough support for it. Again, too hard to manipulate your deck to ensure that you're going to draw whatever you shuffle in. And so I think that's kind of the last missing piece. But that being said, there might be something that I'm missing that somebody else catches, and that can make that archetype work. The only other thing I think makes that archetype kind of hard to execute is that in reality, it's like late game value kind of payoff. And so, with that in mind, you kind of need to play control for the first half or 3/4 of the game. And Rogue is just, as a class, not very um, prone to being able to control well because it's like more hard removal as opposed to like AoE or anything like that. So, I don't know. We'll see what happens. But yeah, I would definitely say more support for existing archetypes than new. But that being said, Rogue will still be a strong class to play. It won't be the best, but it'll still be viable for sure at all levels of ladder.
Excellent. So thank you so much for being on the show today, Pocket.
Thanks for
Can
having
you
me.
share how people can get in touch with you if they want to complain that they used your advice and built bad decks, or that they want to agree with you and say, "Hey, wow, yeah, everything that you said is spot on." How do they get in touch with you?
Yeah, sure. So you could find me on 3 platforms. So Twitch is just gonna be pocket_aces, POCKET_ACES, and then Twitter is going to be kind of the same thing, except there's one more underscore at the beginning of my handle. But if you just look up Pocket Aces HS, it'll be there. And then finally, YouTube is I'm Pocket Aces HS as well. So, yeah, that's how you can
Awesome.
reach me.
I'll make sure to get those updated in the show notes so you'll be able to find them easier, and let them know how great Shuffle Rogue is when it dominates, becomes the S tier, uh, the number one deck in all of Hearthstone. So thanks again, Pocket. Appreciate you
Yeah,
taking the
thanks for
time
having
with
me,
us.
Guy Grumpy.
Always a big fan.
Bye.
Thanks for welcoming me to the Happy Hearthstone. I appreciate you bringing me on. I have been playing Hearthstone since back when Witchwood came out. I started to see some of the odd cards, and then they kind of were there, and then they were gone before I got a chance to really understand what that was all about. But I did start. I was starting to learn free to play, starting through, just kind of making my way through each class, and then eventually landed with Paladin. It just seemed the most straightforward to me as far as a class. It wasn't just random things. They were you built off the things that you were able to play, and it also during that time when I was learning it just seemed more straightforward. I know a lot of people think start with Hunter. That's the class where a
Right.
lot of people do, but for me that was the class of like I can do a lot of damage, but I die. I don't know why I keep dying. Paladin was like, oh, you can heal yourself. This is amazing. And that's where you started to see some of the control aspects and the value of the cards. And for me, that's where I kind of gravitated towards when it came to a class identity. It just really stuck with me. And then, so from there, as far as the class as a whole, started to really find my stride with Paladin when it was actually at its weakest during Ashes of Outlands. That's when Librams were just put out, and it wasn't really the strongest class. It was like you didn't even have a good one cost card to play because the Alder Attendant was 2 until they fixed it. And so it became interesting for me because I would play around with the cards and try and find the best solutions to fix some of the problems. And for me, that was where I really got kind of endeared by the classes. Is for its faults, there's strength in it too. And then to see Scholomance Academy come around and it became the class to be was even more enticing. And then I feel like that's just going to continue into Dark Moon Fair as well. When it
Interesting. And
comes,
you were involved with the testing and things of the Libram Paladin, right? Or
yeah,
Librum Paladin. That
and in
funky.
fact, uh, it's great that you brought that up. Didn't mean to interrupt you there.
That's it.
Um,
Go ahead.
So when it came to Ashes of Outlands, right before Skullomance came out, I actually built a deck that took me to Legend. That was my own creation, and I was so proud of it. It was pure Paladin, Libram, and also Quest. So it combined all three
Wow.
of the deck types that you wouldn't actually think belong together. And in fact, I called the deck Pure Insanity because you had to be insane in order to put that card combination together and go, this is going to work.
And then you made a Highlander Murloc version of it too, right? Just to add more keywords.
Yeah, because you need every keyword in order for the deck to work. But back then, during Ashes of Outlands, you actually needed to find unique strategies in order to make a deck work. And then Skullomance came out, and Pure Paladin was just so strong right off the bat. But then it felt like it kind of hit a wall, and that's where I started to mess around with the Broom in Paladin because it helped regain tempo, and especially helped with one problem that Paladin seems to have is lack of access to rush minions and a way to change that tempo on the board. And with that, I added the Broom in along with Selhet's Pride and actually Owls. Originally, they were in there too. And then I brought that to Funky on one of his. He does this Funky Friday where he has viewers bring in their decks, what they're doing, what they're seeing success with on the ladder, and then he plays them as well. And what's great about that is that you get someone that's playing at a high level and has been doing it for years, bringing his expertise to your creations, and then you're going to be able to take that and build even better things. And so I brought that back in August, and then he went on to the next couple weeks work on refining it, and he'd come back and he'd be like, this is it, this is the one. And then I'd end up asking one question, be like, what about this Argent Braggart? I feel like it's not really doing what we want it to do, only to then switch it out for the pen. That was the change that sent it over into what is now the tier 1 deck that it is.
Right.
And it's amazing to see. And now the frustration is that I have to fight my own deck when I'm on ladder to try to get to Legend.
Although that switched a little bit lately back to more of a pure Paladin archetype. But things definitely change very quickly. I'm sure that we'll see more of your creations going forward into this new set. So this wouldn't be the Happy Hearthstone without at least asking you to share some of the happiness that you've been finding. Obviously, there's some happiness that you've already shared, but what else has been just making you happy in general?
So for me, the things that have been making me really happy recently have been all these changes that we've seen coming from Hearthstone, the achievements, the new duels. Those are so many different ways for the players to be engaged in this game that they love, and maybe not even have to do it in a way that requires them to spend a lot as well. That new progression path, whether you get the Tavern Pass or not, is going to give people access to more in-game gold, and then also just more ways to play the game to have fun with it. And that's just exciting to me. To have more ways to enjoy the game that you already enjoy is always going to be a benefit.
Absolutely. Like, one of the things Hearthstone's known for is driving tilt. So when you start to feel that happening, having more game modes. I had found Battlegrounds to be a great break from the ladder constructed games. So Duels was going to be kind of the same thing. I haven't gotten so much into duels yet, but definitely feel like when there's more options available, then it's going to be something I'll dive into as far as treasures and hero powers and stuff. So having ways that you can stay in the client, stay playing, stay earning achievements, and it's really great and exciting that you can save money by not buying all the other games that you otherwise would.
Yeah, and I like that too. The fact that I still progress on that path when I switch from grinding on ladder to like I just want to chill and do some BGs or maybe duels. I still get to achieve gold in game and feel like I'm progressing towards that end game goal, even though I decided that I wanted to take a break from doing the real, what I consider to be the strenuous work.
Right. So we'll have more on the achievements and progressions on a later podcast. We're really more here to talk about the Paladin. So let's jump right in. We're going to start off with the Day at the Fair. This is a common 3-mana spell. Summon 3 Silverhand recruits and a corrupt of summon 5 instead.
And I remember this was one of the first cards that came out in that reveal video, and getting just super excited to see Paladin right off the bat. I felt like seeing it, I would be like, wow, this is an odd cost card. This is going to work well in Odd Paladin. But after getting a chance to actually play Odd Paladin, you realize that corrupt portion of it, it's somewhat difficult to achieve when you're playing Odd Paladin in Wild. And then I also feel like that's going to become a unique challenge when it comes to standard play as well. Whether to play it on 3 and just get your 3 Silverhand recruits, or to play it on 5. But then it becomes, with this card and then other cards that have come out in the set, is that going to be enough to overwhelm opponents? And there's a lot of ifs involved with this card. For me, I feel like we're going to have to playtest a lot to see it work, and I don't know if it's going to be enough.
Yeah, I tend to agree on the Odd Paladin in Wild that it's just too slow, and there's not enough cards that give you the corrupt effect in that deck. There's a few like Leroy and Lotheb and stuff like that, but I think it's probably going to see more play in Standard, where it's just a buffed up. What was the spell that gave you 2 1/1 taunt minions, or 1/1 taunt Silverhand recruits? It's just
Air
a way
raid.
to put minions on board. Air raid, yes. So it's a way to put minions on the board. There's a chance that you can use it to overwhelm. There's ways to give your guys Divine Shield in the Standard coming that we'll talk about later. So I don't think it's going to be completely absent, but yeah, maybe at first glance it was a bit more exciting for potential other modes. And we'll see. I'm sure we'll see it, just maybe not as much as we thought at first glance. Next up, the Hammer of Naru. It's an epic 6-mana 3/3 weapon with a battle cry: summon a 6/6 holy elemental with taunt.
And I was really excited to see this card. It's for the cost. It's an amazing weapon. You're going to get a 6/6 taunt plus 9 damage across 3 turns. That's amazing. Additionally, the one thing that I noticed with it is the holy elemental. The fact that it's an elemental then means that you're going to have some interactions then with the old god N'Zoth as well. See this card working really well in a big paladin commencement duel type deck with N'Zoth in it as well. Hopefully you don't end up pulling N'Zoth with your commencement or duel, but if you don't, the reward is going to be that you're going to have all these other amazing minions in a deck that are going to come back once he hits the board.
I hadn't thought of that.
And yeah, I see it as being extremely powerful. This weapon is going to see play not only in that type of big duel deck, but also even in pure. It's a solid taunt with then attack power, and that's going to be something that's going to help put some more damage in and be able to allow you to sustain board presence for Paladin, and that's amazing.
Yeah, I agree. Just a 6/6 for 6/6 taunt for 6 is as decent stats. It's not, jump out of your seat, but it's playable. And then having the weapon on top of that is just kind of gravy.
Yeah, I mean, you look at the fire elemental. It does only 3 damage when it hits the board, and that's a 6/5, and it doesn't have taunt.
Right.
And that's considered to be a good card.
Right. Next up, we have the legendary High Exarch. Is that Yrel?
Yrel.
It's an 8-mana legendary 7/5 minion with Battle Cry. If your deck has no neutral cards, gain Rush, Lifesteal, Taunt, and Divine Shield.
And immediately what comes to mind when you see those keywords all combined together is Ziliax. One of the best cards that I can remember when I first started Hearthstone. I was like, I don't know what this card is, but it's amazing, and it goes in everything. Now, this one for Yrel can only be in Pure Paladin, but that doesn't stop it from being any less amazing. Immediately upon seeing this card, I was psyched for Pure Paladin. It gives more endgame sustainability, and it's once it hits the board, you're going to heal up, you're going to swing and have a minion left on the board, also still with taunt. It's just a phenomenal card. The only thing with the restriction of that it has to be inside a pure deck means that you can't have those neutral cards that I've grown to love throwing into my Paladin decks.
Right. So the biggest difference here for me versus Ziliax is the magnetic potential for Ziliax, and in a deck built around it, it had that extra strength of even bigger stats. This one to me seems a bit expensive. 8 mana for a 7/5. If you get the Battle Cry, that's great, but there's ways to shuffle things into your deck and stuff that make it a little bit less, even in a pure Paladin. So I'm excited for it. I think that there's a lot of utility, and you're going to get it off pretty frequently. I'm also excited by the art because it just brings back memories of my good friend Alkali Lake, who built a Draenei Paladin as a costume contest for Twitch. So it's the alley card for me. So I'll definitely be trying it out. I kind of see it as the Shirvala almost, where you don't want it early. You want it to stay in your deck and then pull it out in ways that you can make it less expensive,
and even to receive it then off of your Lightforge Crusader. That's your perfect follow-up from your turn 7 to turn 8. It's going to be amazing.
All right, looking forward to seeing what you come up with. Next up, we have the Balloon Merchant. It's a rare 4-mana 3/5 with the Battle Cry. Give your Silverhand recruits +1 attack and Divine Shield.
And so this card kind of follows along with Day at the Fair. I thought immediately, there's going to be some implication for Even Paladin, but Even Paladin, only sometimes gets those Silverhand recruits on board. It's not as prevalent as Odd Paladin, where it's just Silverhand recruit after Silverhand recruit after Silverhand recruit. But with that, then to see it as, well, this could be that card that then you play. If you've played your Day at the Fair on 3, then you follow it up on 4 with your Balloon Merchant. It gives you a reason to go ahead and play your Day at the Fair not corrupted, which then makes you then wonder, well, how do you then maximize that? And it's balancing all that out that is going to be the interesting play that will happen with this card. Again, it is more support for a kind of dude paladin build. We're going to probably see it in the future grow stronger, but until then, this is just going to be helpful, but not over the top.
Yeah, the stats for 4 mana as a 3/5 are they're okay. You like to see the heavier health at this level. I actually think people are going to experiment with it, but yeah, probably find that it's not quite there yet, unless we get more support for Silver Hands. I think that it kind of sets up a refresh, though, for the day at the fair. So you get a big board of Silver Hand recruits, play your first balloon merchant, and then it makes your next day at the fair that much better. So there's definitely still some synergies, even though it may look a little backwards at first. So I agree. You're probably not going to see it a ton, but people are going to experiment with it. Partly too because there's an achievement for having so many of your Silver Hand recruits have Divine Shield. So this gets you a good portion of the way there.
And I think we'll see it. I think it's like Librams were in Ashes of Outlands. They came along, but they didn't see their full stride until they hit Skullman's Academy. So I feel like they're building towards something with this Silver Hand Paladin, but they're not there yet.
Right. I'm waiting for the George the Fallen legendary minion.
And who knows? Maybe it's something that's coming out in the mini set as well. So
that's a good point. Next up, we have the Carousel Griffin. He's a common 5 mana 5/5 mech with Divine Shield and a corrupt effect of gain +3/+3 and taunt.
And I saw this. It was like, what's corrupt? Let's figure this out. That was when they were still kind of explaining the whole corrupt thing. And at its base stats, a 5/5 with Divine Shield, not bad. That's not a terrible card. And definitely an 8/8 with taunt. Once it is corrupted, it is amazing. But the hard part is how do you corrupt this card? And for Paladin, that's the difficult thing. There's not many cards that you do want to play that exceed the cost of 5, except for in that big Paladin setup where you have Commencement that's available to you. You might even use. Now I can't think of it.
Duel.
Duel could pull it out. That's the hard part.
That's
though,
the
is that you'd end up with
so can Commencement.
A 5/5 with Divine Shield. It would stay on the board. With Duel Commencement, you'd end up with 5/5 again. But if it's in hand, then it's great. But it's balancing out that. I don't think this is going to be the mech that a big Paladin is going to end up using, actually, because of that downside. I feel like they may even use the other new mech from the Claw Machine instead of Carousel Griffin, just because of the benefit of being able to then draw another card with that as well and get it buffed as well.
And Rush, right? So
and that has Rush. So it works great for took out something on Duel, it didn't die, it can hit something else again right away. And then even if it's pulled off Commencement, it has Divine Shield and Rush. It's a better mech.
If you can get the corrupt, it's really, really good. Like an 8/8 Divine Shield taunt is so good. But agree, you might have the weapon as one that would corrupt it, or there are some 6 and 7 mana cards that you're going to want to play, especially in an old Gods deck. Then it might be just a late game option to drop in. But in Arena, it's fantastic. Because you're going to corrupt it pretty frequently. So there's definitely a place for it. I also just love the art, like riding an eagle. Who hasn't wanted to do that?
Especially because it's like the one that's outside of the grocery store, and then it becomes like you put in the quarter, and then it turns into when it gets corrupted, it turns into this what am I doing? This is not a kiddie ride.
It turns into the bucking bronco, right? Nice. Next up, we have Loxrathian the Redeemed, a legendary 5 mana 5/5 demon with the battle cry for the rest of the game. After you summon a Silver Hand recruit, give it Divine Shield.
And this is that card that would push the scales for Silverhand Recruit Paladin build being amazing. It's definitely going to help it get there. But again, we talked about how there may not be enough. In Wild, he's too slow at 5 cost. You've already almost gotten to the point where the game's won before you finally start to get Divine Shields on all your little dudes. He's just not gonna make that happen.
See, I actually kind of think in Wild, then he sees play and maybe replacing Lotheb or something like that, because you do run out of steam if you don't win by turn 6 or 7, and having Divine Shield may give you that survivability, because a lot of the time, as I've been using Odd Paladin to level up in Wild recently, then it's more a matter of just getting your guys to stick so that you can give them the buff the next turn. And there's so many ways that they can get rid of just 1/1s, right? That making them hit them all twice would be just enough to get you that extra buff, I think. But we'll see. But you're right, it is slow at 5 mana for aggro decks,
and that's maybe where he'll see play right away. I think about it, if you get that pie in the sky of like you get him on 5 and you're able to play him on 5. Yeah, it could definitely make that deck work. The consistency of though getting that card right now to appear for you on 5, I just think it's not going to be there. And then to be able to capitalize on it in standard play right now with just your hero power, air raid, and day at the fair, and maybe tour guide. I don't know if we have enough of that synergy to really make the deck happen. I think people will definitely play it. I think it's going to be one of those decks that people are going to day one want to see this card hit the table.
Well, this is the one that corrupts the day at the fair too. So corrupted on 5, on 6, then you get 5 Divine Shield Silverhand recruits. I don't know. I don't know that there's enough.
Be much better than what I think it is.
Sounds.
I'm definitely gonna give it a try. I'm excited about it. I do want to play with it. I don't know, and I don't want to go hog and say this is the best card from the set when I don't feel that way.
No, I'm not trying to pressure you into thinking differently. I'm just I kind of see where they're going with it, and you might be right. There might be more support later that really makes it pop, but I'm kind of excited about it. White weenie deck or dude paladin should be fun. Next up, Oh My Yogg. Speaking of fun, it's an epic 1-mana secret spell. Whenever your opponent casts a spell, they instead cast a random one of the same cost.
And when I saw this, actually, I didn't even get to see it at first. One of my coworkers actually saw it come up and spoiled it for me. And when they said it, I was like, "Wait, what? How much does it cost?" 1. I was like, "That's Paladin," and got to figure out that Paladin's essentially getting counterspell. It's amazing for me. I feel like what this card does for Paladin secrets is it actually strengthens all the other secrets, because on top of it, the Paladin secrets were before this card were things that if it happened, you're like, I can easily test around this or easily play around it. This new secret being in the pool means that those spells that are about to be cast, they're going to have to think twice before they cast them. They could get
something better though, which is the part that scares me. Is I know a lot of people are considering it like a counter spell, and it does counter the effect, that the intended effect most of the time. I guess it could change targets if it randomly summons the same spell. Do you know if this one is only spells of your class, or can it be spells from any class?
It looks like it says random one of the same cost. So I would think it's of any class. So
Oh.
I think it's also interesting too. People are like, well, you could play test with the coin, and or test the spell with the coin. And I'm like, but that could also backfire on you because your coin could turn into forbidden words, and you had 10 mana, and you had an amazing old god sitting on the board, and that old god's gone, and so is all your mana.
Right. Or you could get prep and get something even cheaper,
Even
or
cheaper.
or you could overload. So even early on, get the zap and overload.
Yeah.
Maybe not in standard anymore, but yeah,
there's a lot of fun things that are going to happen because this card is in play. I also feel like
agree.
there's even the potential for with some of the corrupted things where there's well, you want to corrupt it. Well, what do you do on the next turn where you finally get to play that card that was that price? Now you have 2 mana left over on the turn when you finally get to play it. Well, that's where maybe some of these secrets could come in. And we might even see maybe Secret Paladin come back and get to see that into play as well. I know
they haven't gotten a lot of secret support lately, so in standard maybe not, but I think we probably will see people experimenting with it in wild.
Yeah. I think it's a great card though. It definitely makes the other Paladin secrets stronger because it exists.
Yeah, and this one kind of confused me though too, because it's not really the random aspect. Isn't really one that you usually think of Paladin for. They're lawful good, right? So
I think that's where the old gods had a hand in that.
There you go. It's corrupted. It should be a corrupt effect, right? Next up, the Red Scale Dragon Tamer, a 2-mana 2/3 common Murloc minion with a death rattle, draw a dragon.
And a lot of people have kind of given this guy the side eye and thinking, no, that's not all that great. But I think this is an amazing Murloc to be added to the Murloc pools for Paladin. Paladin's strength in Murloc Paladin is the Scale Lord. To be able to tutor him so that way you have him in hand is just even more amazing. Plus the body for 2, getting a 2/3 is pretty great.
I agree, and I experimented in Ashes with Dragon Paladin with the Murloc package because we had what's his name, Scargle, that also draws based on the dragon. So it seems to be a combo that they're really wanting us to push that hasn't really been experimented with too much. So I want to see it work. So I'm hopeful that this is enough. Plus, he'd look great on my shelf.
And I think even in Dragon Paladin kind of suffered because it didn't have an early minion on 2 that was pretty solid to play. Other than what was it? The tasty fish or
the balloon? Yeah, the one on on the balloon.
Yeah, the one that's the snack for the dragons. But you add this guy in, and now all of a sudden you've got more draw inside a deck that sometimes lacks that draw ability.
Yeah, good point.
And you've got that synergy of Murlocs and dragons and Murlocs. So I think there might be something fun that does come out of it, where there's maybe even a mix of it, where we see kind of like a Scales Paladin.
Nice. I'm definitely going to be trying it. Next up is Snack Run, a 2-mana spell, rare. Discover a spell, restore health to your hero equal to its cost.
Initially seeing this, I think it's a interesting card. However, the usability for it, I think it's going to be initially just on that dual Paladin, kind of as some initial upfront healing to discover something that then could also potentially help you. But the Discover pool for Paladin spells is a little murky. There are some really bad Paladin spells that you don't want to get off of this. And then you'll end up potentially either needing to choose the bad spell because you need more healing, or potentially choosing the secret because that's the important
Mhm.
thing, and not getting enough healing because you just spent 2 mana to get 1 healing. Granted, you do get access to more spells, but I used a discover mechanic at one point early on using Vulpera Scoundrel and in the past, and I didn't like the results of that. So I don't know if this is going to see a lot of play.
Yeah, I'm kind of guessing it won't. Although 2 mana discover a spell seems like it would be good, you almost would rather have. I mean, there's so many better choices that are more consistent for what you'll get from it, and the health restoration. There's especially I'm trying to think of even what deck this would run in, and I'm just drawing a blank. So, like with the dragons, there's other ways that you can heal. With the Librams, then it doesn't really fit in for synergy wise. And you have the other heal that's pretty big with the Libram of Hope. So you
And
don't really
even
need the
get
health. It's really more the discover the spell. Yeah, and
you don't even get the
that's
spell
not worth it,
back from Liadrin either, so that's kind
right?
of sad too. The only thing that I could see is maybe in like a Yogg Paladin where you're trying to get this is 2 spells in
10 to
1
10 spells.
card.
Well,
So
that's a good
you're
point.
building up the number of spells, but even then, I still feel like there's better ways of getting there.
Next up's the Carnival Barker, a rare 3 mana 3/2. Whenever you summon a 1 health minion, give it +1/+2.
This is another one of those cards to enable that Silverhand Recruit Paladin that they're trying
Yep.
to get us to build. This one, however, I feel like is probably the best out of the ones that they've given us so far. In that there's it doesn't have to be just Silverhands that utilize the buff. In that it can, I think it'll see more play than maybe even the Balloon Merchant. But it doesn't.
Yeah, I mean, it works with Broom and
even it works if you look at the current Lee Broom. You can play your Sellhats, you can play your Loot Hoarder, you can play your Broom, and all of them are going to get buffed. And now they're even a stronger board clear if that's what you were needing to then draw into more. And at that 3 costs, it's cheap enough that's a viable option to utilize. I know Cult Master even was used a little bit early on in the some builds of Librum, and that was 4 mana, and people were still using it. But that also helped with the draw as well. At 3, and then having increased stats on the board as well. It's great. I think it's definitely going to see play.
Yeah, especially if you can get it to stick and then play like Divine Shield minions with 1 health. That 3/1 Divine Shield guy comes to mind. That
the Og Merchant, the Guardian Og Merchant, could keep him on the board as well, for sure. I think there's an interesting play that is going to happen with that. And also with some of the neutral cards that are then also coming down the pike as well in Dark Moon.
Yeah, you've got me really excited about this one. I mean, it looks like a strong card just on its face, but now my mind's just churning with the options. And the extra health, especially early on, is just so big. He won't last very long. He's basically got taunt on him, so
he's the taunt target for sure.
Yeah, you kind of want to couple this on turn 6 with the party at the fair, or day at the fair,
and day at the fair on turn 6 would be phenomenal. You get Lothraxian on turn 5. You're able to play Carnival Barker and Day at the Fair and fill your board with
3
Divine Shield, 3/2 or 2/3,
2/3.
Silverhand. I think they're going to be upset that you made that happen.
All right, on to the neutrals. We have Wriggling Horror. He's a 2 mana 2/1 with a battle cry. Give adjacent minions +1/+1.
And so great that we just talked about Carnival Barker, because Wriggling Horror then also becomes a great way to potentially protect your Carnival Barker, plus also a way to enable this kind of dude paladin build. Like I said, it's not that I'm not interested in trying out this deck idea. I just don't know. We'll have to see in playtesting if it's going to work. But you'll end up with 3-4 in stats on the Wriggling Horror. Then also your Carnival Barker protected a little bit more, has now 3 health instead. And also, it's a great card for a follow-up on turn 2. If you started off with turn 1 Tour Guide, you have a Silverhand Recruit and a Tour Guide on board. And then also then the next turn, Wriggling Horror. You've solidified an amazing start. You got three bodies on the board, 2/2, 2/1, and a 2/2, and you've only spent 3 mana. That's kicking it off. That's you're almost going to see an aggro style play coming out of this card.
That is value, yeah, for sure.
And I definitely think there's been a lot of people that have seen this card and think that it's going to be something that's put into a lot of decks, and I definitely think so. Fungalmancer was one of those that saw a lot of play, and this is essentially the same card but at a cheaper cost.
The Dark Moon Rabbit is an epic 10 mana 1/1 beast minion, but it has rush and poisonous and also damages the minions next to whoever it attacks. So what are you thinking here? Dual Paladin?
Dual Paladin. Like I said, I feel like it's gotten a lot of support. You've gotten the hammer, you've gotten a couple other things coming in there, and if you happen to hit this on dual, you're happy. If you happen to hit this on commencement, you're even happier. And then to have the Old God of N'Zoth able to bring him back because he's a beast. There's layers upon layers in which this card is gonna earn its name for sure. I love the picture of it too. It's sitting on top of the Templar armor. Reminds you of Monty Python and the Holy Grail. I don't know where the Holy Hand Grenade is because we're gonna need it.
That'll be the 35 card set, right?
Because I mean, dual. It's taken out. It's going to take out 2 cards. The card that's on the board next to where your dual target is placed. Plus, it's killing those instantly, and then only to come back again if you have N'Zoth. And commencement is taking out 3 targets, and it's going to stay on the board, and they're going to have to deal with it again. So.
Well, it's not really taking them out because it'll take out the one from duels, but the Divine Shield Paladins that are all that anybody's ever going to see, the Silverhand Recruits, it'll just take off their Divine Shield.
Take off their shield.
So all this talk about N'Zoth, but the old god that you chose was Yogg-Saron, Master of Fate, which is a legendary 10 mana 7/5 with a battle cry. If you've cast 10 spells this game, spin the wheel of Yogg-Saron. And there's 6 different options for the Wheel of Yogg-Saron. You can fill the board with random minions, then give yours rush, destroy all other minions and gain their attack and health, fill your hand with random spells. They cost 0 this turn, cast Pyroblast randomly until a player dies, take control of 3 random minions, or cast a random spell for every spell you've cast this game. Targets chosen randomly.
So, yeah, I think I've hinted at enough of where I want N'Zoth to play with that big dual paladin. So Yogg-Saron was the one that I wanted to talk about most. And that's because I can see him instantly just getting slotted into Librum or even Pure Paladin. And you're easily going to cast Librum of Wisdom 10 times, 20 times, 65 times before you finally decide to slap him onto the board. And I feel like it's just going to be that's going to be the epitome of madness at the Dark Moon Fair when you get that Rod of Roasting going around and pyroblasting everything on the board. That's where I see me immediately. the immediate joy on my face.
As it wipes out all the divine shields on your opponent's silver hand recruits, but hits you in the face.
Pyroblast at a time.
Nice. All right. Well, with that, that's all of the cards that we wanted to talk about in this section. Obviously, there's more old gods to discover. We talked about N'Zoth a lot. We'll let you experiment with that. But before we let him go, we have a card of the week. So Noodle Swoop has chosen the High Exarch, Yrel.
And I just feel like she's going to be that card that is going to hopefully make Pure Paladin stay on top. So with that, I decided to have a little bit of fun with it and do my card of the week song in ode to her. And with that, I modeled it after Pink's song Funhouse.
Okay,
so let's see here. Do 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 do. This used to be a fun house, but now it's full of old gods. It's time to start the countdown. I'm gonna burn it down, down, down. With holy fire, I'm gonna burn it down. 9, 8, 7. Precision, unity, perfection, fun.
Precision, unity, perfection. Indeed. The callback was great. I loved it. So thoughts on just Paladin as a whole, this whole set? Are there going to be new archetypes, or you think it's more support for old archetypes?
I think there's plenty of play testing to be done. I feel like that, first off, there's definitely that new archetype of silver, well, rehash, I should say, of Silverhand Paladin. We're going to see that definitely play tested. It's going to hit. I think there'll be some people that'll stick behind it and try and make it what it can potentially be. But I feel like the dual paladin was something that everybody was gung-ho to try and make work during Skullman's Academy, and it kind of fizzled out right after that initial start. And I feel like that's really where we're going to see people playing. I feel like that's going to be the mainstay, with also Pure Paladin having an incredibly strong addition that it's going to get. Those decks are going to give each other the run for the money. I feel like it's in a strong place. There's also definitely some now new stiff competition coming out. Ticketus for one is something that I think is going to create a lot of issues for a lot of people. Your deck's just going to disappear on you.
Right.
So.
Well, I definitely appreciate you coming on the show and sharing your expertise. I'm really looking forward to what decks you come up with. For those listeners that want to find you, how can they get in touch with you to say how right or wrong you were and see what decks you've been building?
So just for now, I'm on Twitter. You can get me at Noodle Swoop. That's the easiest way to reach me. Additionally, I'm all over Twitch. I in the different Hype Horizon lobbies, and you may see me in other places shortly in the future. But that'd be the easiest way to reach out to me. Let me know what you think if you decided that I should really start my career as singing for renditions. Reach out, let me know.
All right. And we will definitely get your contact information then uploaded in the show notes. And like he said, he's in a lot of chats. I'll be building some of his decks, I'm sure, on day one to test them out for him or with him. So definitely come by and check us out. Thanks again, Noodle Swoop. Have a fantastic day.
And thank you.
My shaman expert today is Rumum. Rumum from the same area of the country as I am, but we've never met in person yet. So we'll have to remedy that at some point. Welcome to the show. Would you care to introduce yourself? Like how long you've been playing, what's drawing you to Shaman, and any Hearthstone accomplishments you want to share?
Yeah, so my name is Gabe, aka Rumham. I've been playing for about 3 years, maybe coming on 4 years. My most recent accomplishment was reaching rank 2 legend just about a week ago for
So
the first
close.
time. I was pretty excited about that. Yeah, it was kind of unfortunate loss on rank 2, but you know, it happens.
And what's drawn you to Shaman as a favorite class over those 3 years?
Well, so first of all, Shaman was just the first. When I first started playing, Shaman was the first deck that I was able to craft. It was like a mid-range Jade Shaman back when that was a thing with like Totem Golem and Tunnel Trog, the classic OP 1 and a 2.
Yep.
And ever since then, I've just been playing Shaman. I was a big fan of Even Shaman, Shudderwalk Shaman, unfortunately Evolve Shaman. Back when they brought the wild cards back.
Yeah.
I've just always been into Shaman.
And you've had a few heydays then as a Shaman player, but recently it's been a little bit of a rougher go.
Yeah, it feels like over the last couple of years, Shaman is either really, really good or really, really bad, and not a whole lot in between.
Right. Well, hopefully we have some good things to talk about here that will put it up to the at least good part. Maybe we don't want it to be really, really good again, because that forces them to make it really, really bad again at some point. So fingers
Right.
crossed they finally figured it out. But this wouldn't be the Happy Hearthstone without asking you to share some of the joy that's in your life. So what's been making you happy lately?
Well, it might be a little too on the topic, but I think what's making me happy are these Shaman cards. I think we're
All
finally
right.
going to get a meta where Shaman is good and potentially not oppressive. I don't think these cards are too good, but I think Shaman is positioned to be like a pretty dominant force in the new meta.
Excellent. So good, but not nerfed.
That's what I'm hoping for.
All right. Sounds good. Well, that's what we're here to talk about. So let's jump right in. First up, we have Dunk Tank, a rare 4-mana spell. Deal 4 damage, corrupt, then deal 2 damage to all enemy minions.
Yeah, so the first thing I thought of when I first saw this card was this is basically, once it's corrupted, it's basically swipe with spell damage, more or less.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the first thing I thought of, but after thinking about it a little bit more, it feels like this, as a removal spell, it doesn't really fit into Shaman right now, because currently we already have much better removal options.
Right.
Thinking of Earthquake, Hagatha's Scheme, Torrent, they kind of all just outclass Dunk Tank in terms of removal.
Mm-hmm.
And I think 4 mana is too expensive to use this as like burn damage, because this can go face. Mm-hmm. Which is significant. So, unfortunately, I'm not a huge fan of this card. I was looking at what Shaman cards will be losing in the next rotation in April, and we will be losing Hagatha's Scheme and Earthquake. So it's possible that this sees a lot more play in the next expansion when we lose those prime removal spells.
That makes sense. So when I saw this one, I was kind of, well, the art first drew me in, that it's just kind of a silly, goblin sitting on the Dunk Tank and getting hit in the head. That's pretty hilarious, which obviously makes you want to play it because it seems silly. But with all the spell damage that they gave Shaman in previous sets, I kind of thought maybe that's what they were going for, that this could be a lot more than 4 damage and a lot more than 2 damage to all the enemy minions, so you could get a nice burst to the face in the right deck. But again, very strategic and probably not something that's really strong out the gate yet.
Yeah, it's just that in terms of like a spell damage Shaman, it seems like if you want this to go face, you have better options like Lightning Bolt, Lava Burst, a couple new cards that we're going to talk about later. And so it just feels like this falls short in both ways that you could use it, both in the face damage and in the removal.
Okay, that's fair. Let's move on to Magic Fin. He's an epic 3-mana, 3/4 Murloc. After a friendly Murloc dies, add a random legendary minion to your hand.
Yeah, so this, out of all of the Shaman cards, this is the one that I'm probably the least excited for.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it doesn't really seem like, sure, it'll probably be played if Murloc Shaman ever becomes a thing again. But we haven't really seen a good Murloc Shaman deck in a couple expansions now. And the main drawback that I see with this card is that if you're playing a Murloc deck, you want your Murlocs to go face. You don't want to trade with your Murlocs. If you're trading with your Murlocs, you're probably losing, right?
That's a good point. Now, this one, though, I like because he's a decent body for the Murlocs. And I feel like, although we haven't really seen a lot of it in the last couple of expansions, that the Shaman, Murloc Shaman, is better than it might seem because of its dearth of play. And there's all kinds of draw to get more Murlocs when you play them still. There's this guy now that gives you that more of a win condition with the Murloc. So I'm pretty confident that we are going to see a return to the Murloc Shaman, and that this is one of the better cards in the set. So it makes me feel like I am not a Shaman expert when I hear the Shaman expert say that it's not as exciting as it might look at first glance.
Yeah, well, I do agree that it's a great body for the Murloc tag, and it does have that going for it. It's just that I don't really see Murloc Shaman having enough support just to be a good deck in general. And the card text doesn't really do a whole lot because random legendaries on average are going to be pretty bad, especially in the kind of deck that you'd play this in. So I just don't see the effect being good. I don't see the deck being good. It's definitely a very fun card. A lot of like casual players are going to have a lot of fun with this card, but I just don't see it being like competitively viable.
Fair enough. I'll just put it up on my Murloc shelf and we'll admire it, thinking someday, or maybe in Wild. Next up is the Deathmatch Pavilion. It's a 2-mana epic spell. Summon a 3/2 duelist. If your hero attacked this turn, summon another.
Yeah, so this card's pretty interesting because if you can play this on 2 and get both bodies, this is very powerful, clearly. The downside is we currently have no real way to do that outside of, I guess you could go coin Rune Dagger and then play this on 2 if you're on the coin. But right now, Shaman doesn't have any 1-cost weapons, and the only 2-cost weapon that you actually want to put in your deck is Rune Dagger. So at the moment I see this card falling short. But if Shaman ever does get a 1-mana weapon that you actually want to play, then I see this card having the potential to be very powerful.
And there's a few cards in this set that Shaman got for that have bonuses for attacking. So I was kind of surprised to see only one weapon. I'm kind of wondering if there's more coming in the 35 card expansion just to give it the support that it actually needs. But I tend to agree that it's really good if you get both and get them early. But later on, 2 health minions are really easy to clear, and a 2-mana 3/2 you can get with an effect. So it's not the greatest combination unless you just play it for the 3/2 to help build up a Yogg or something like that.
Yeah, and the 3/2 body was kind of the other reason why I don't see this card being so good. Is after turn 2, the earliest you're playing this is turn 3 or 4, and by then it's far easier for your opponent to have something that deals 2 damage to 2 minions. Maybe they have a cheap removal spell and a small minion on the board, and then this card kind of just did nothing.
Yep, exactly. The Grand Totem Eyesore, a legendary 3-mana 0/4 totem minion. At the end of your turn, give +1/+1 to all other totems in your hand, deck, and battlefield.
Yeah, so this card is kind of a weird one to evaluate. it feels like Totem Shaman in the current expansion is just on the cusp of being viable.
Mm-hmm.
And this totem is clearly pretty good. But the only real problem I have with this card is that you're not actually getting that much value off of the effect unless you already have a couple totems on your board.
Mm-hmm.
And then you don't even get to attack with the totems that turn, because this activates at the end of your turn. And in terms of buffing totems in your hand and deck, there's really only two other totems that you want to put in your deck right now, it being Totem Goliath and Evil Totem. Maybe you want to run Manatide, but Manatide has been power crept by now. It's really not a very good card, and same with Flame Tongue Totem.
Well, what's the 5 mana or the 5/5? That's a totem, isn't it?
Yeah, that's the Totem Goliath. There's
Goliath,
that, and then Evil Totem, and those are like really the only two totems that I want to put in my deck right now outside of this card.
That's fair. Yeah, so you just need to rely on them being on the board, or the Goliath getting killed and boosting after that. So I see what you mean. There's a lot of excitement on it.
Yeah, well, and there is a 3-mana spell that will give it +2/+2 and copy it,
Mm-hmm.
and then they would buff each other at the end of the turn, making them way harder to clear. So maybe there's some play there if you're able to consistently copy this card the turn that you play it. And, playing this for a 0/4 on 3, there's a good chance your opponent won't be able to clear it if you just play this on an empty board. They might not be able to clear a 0/4 that early in the game. And then maybe you get 2 activations off of this. And then maybe it's good enough. But I'm a little bit skeptical. I was also meaning to mention we are getting an Amalgam card, but I just don't think that's good enough to really
4 mana, 4/5.
Yeah, it's not the kind of card you'd want to put in a Totem Shaman deck is the problem.
Right.
Yeah, it would get buffed, but I don't know. I'm pretty skeptical about this card. I think it will be good if we get a couple more playable totems, but as of now, I don't see Totem Shaman being the kind of Shaman deck that we're going to be playing.
But maybe good in duels, where you get a few more that you're maybe stuck with. So
yeah, or Wild. It's possible that this could see play in Wild, because there's a number of good totems that Wild players have access to. So maybe there's that, but I don't really play Wild, so I can't speak to that.
Fair enough. Next up is Revolve, a 1 mana common spell. Transform all minions into random ones with the same cost.
Yeah, this card is very cool. And the first thing that I think that a lot of people don't realize is this is all minions, not your opponent's minions, not your minions, both players' minions.
Right.
So there's a lot of very specific uses for this card, and it's possible that all of those uses will add up to being good and seeing play in some sort of control deck. So after looking at the priest cards, it feels like some sort of big priest or res priest is gonna potentially be the new priest archetype, well, quote unquote new.
Right.
In which case, if some sort of res priest is very popular, this card becomes a lot better, right?
Right.
Also, there is potential synergy with Desert Hare. You can play Desert Hare and then play this.
There you go.
And it's like a pseudo evolve, I guess. Another potential use could be with something like Walking Fountain. You play Walking Fountain, you make a couple trades, you clear their minions, you heal, and then you revolve, and then you turn that 4/1 or 4/2 into a brand new 8-drop.
And 8-drops are the best in the game, right? So
yeah, the 8-drops are pretty good. Let's see, what else did I say? Yeah, and then I guess maybe Libram Paladin, if that's still a deck, this would get rid of all of their Librams. So there's that. But yeah, the main thing with this card that's not doing it for me is, for those uses that I just mentioned, why not just play Devolving Missiles? And that's just this seems like a worse Devolving Missiles at the moment.
Well, unless you get some of those ones that are mini buffs, like you mentioned, the Desert Hare, and it seems like a little bit better Plague of Murlocs because you have a little bit more control over. I don't know, maybe not better Plague of Murlocs because you could really mess with the res pool there for res priest and things. So I don't know. You might try it and just as a way to change board states and be random.
Yeah, I think this card is going to be more of a tech card, or it's really going to depend on what the meta as a whole looks like.
Mhm.
And if there's if silence effects are very good in this meta, then this will probably see play in any sort of like mid-rangey control shaman.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know. I just feel like right now devolving missiles is just better, and I'd rather play that than revolve.
And then you have more impact with your own board, where you're playing cards that you want to keep, right? With devolving missiles, you get the same effect most of the time. Actually, a better effect because it reduces their cost, makes it a little harder to deal with. Makes sense.
Yeah, and the last point I have about this is this card existing, it does make Wand Maker in Shaman a little bit better, because now you're less likely to get the Forked Lightning, which is generally the low roll of all the Wand Maker cards that you would get. So it might make Wand Maker a little bit better. I wouldn't mind getting this randomly generated.
Yeah, absolutely. Good point.
Mm-hmm.
Next up is the Cage Match Custodian, a common 2-mana 2/2 elemental minion with a battle cry, draw a weapon.
Now, this card I'm excited about. I think this is probably one of the best cards in the entire set.
Wow.
This card is just insane. So Shaman generally has... We have a couple good weapons. We have Rune Dagger. We have a weapon that we're going to be talking about in a few cards, and we have Doomhammer. I guess we also have the evolve weapon too. This could fit into Evolve Shaman. The uses for this card are endless. My opinion on this card is that it's going to be played in every single Shaman deck until it rotates out.
Oh wow!
I don't really see a world where you would play a Shaman deck that doesn't run this card. It sort of makes the weapons better. It's a great body to play. I compare this card to Corsair Cash, which is basically used in every warrior deck, right? This is Corsair Cash, but instead of the extra durability, you're just getting the stats on board immediately the turn you play it.
Interesting. I guess I don't play a lot of Shaman or haven't in a while. And when I do, it's Murlocs. So I haven't played a ton of weapons. So I kind of saw this and just passed over it. Like, oh, you're drawing a weapon, but what weapons would you really want with it? You've named quite a few good ones. So yeah, I'm eager to see if you're right that it's in every deck. It makes sense the way you speak it so clearly.
Yeah, and just traditionally in Hearthstone, cards that are any sort of minion that has fair stats for its mana cost and also tutors out a good card, they always see play.
Absolutely. So
I just don't. Yeah, it's too good to not be played. I'm really excited for this card. I think it's going to allow for a lot of archetypes to be viable.
Excellent. Next up is the Pitmaster, a rare 3-mana 1/2 with a battle cry, summon a 3/2 duelist, and a corrupt of summon 2.
Yeah, so the Pitmaster. I think there might be a world where this card is good. I don't see it happening quite yet. Sort of for the same reason why what was that 2-mana Deathmatch Pavilion. I feel like this card isn't so good for the same reason why Deathmatch Pavilion isn't so good. If you corrupt this, yes, it's a lot of stats for how much mana you have to spend on it. However, the earliest you're playing this is probably turn 5, maybe turn 4 if you're on the coin.
Right.
On turn 5, it's so easy for your opponent to clear a board of 2 health minions.
Right.
Like, this is not going to be scary on turn 5.
Right. So maybe this is meant as a Token Shaman seems kind of weird. It's been a while since we've had that, but I agree that the 2 health is the problem for all of their summons so far. Um, and this body himself isn't all that great for 3 mana. So um, yeah, it's just too easy to clear. Probably not seen a ton.
Well, just going back to the Pitmaster, there are a few small uses. So, for example, if you're playing this in Evolve Shaman, like you mentioned, this is it's pretty bad stats for its mana cost, but the other bodies you get are pretty good. So maybe you play this and then you evolve your board and it's a little bit better, or a buff like what you mentioned,
or revolve it.
Yeah, or potentially revolve. And then the other use could potentially be, what did I say? Right, Quest Shaman. If your quest is activated and you're doubling this battle cry, this is like an entire board of minions for 3 mana. Well, 5 mana with the hero power.
Right.
So maybe this is better maybe it's playable in Quest Shaman.
That makes sense. Gets you one closer. Gets you a few with Shutterwalk as well. So we'll see.
Yeah, maybe.
Storm Strike then is a 3 mana common spell. Deal 3 damage to a minion and give your hero +3 attack this turn.
So this is another card that I'm very excited about. I think this card is busted.
Really?
I think this is similar to the Cage Match Custodian in that this card is going to see play in basically every Shaman deck until it rotates out. It fits in every sort of maybe not Evolve Shaman, but this is an aggro card. Mm-hmm. It's a mid-range card, and it's a control card. This could be used in a control deck. This is like a great early game removal, right? You deal 3 damage to a minion, and then you kill another minion with your hero. Mm-hmm. Same within mid range, and then in an aggro deck, this can be comboed really well with Doomhammer or the legendary that we're going to be talking about in a couple cards. There's a lot of ways to get more than just 3 attack from this spell.
Good point. So next up is the Whack-A-Knoll Hammer. It's a 3 mana rare weapon. For 3 attack and 2 durability. After your hero attacks, give a random friendly minion +1/+1.
So this card it's kind of hard to. I'm not really sure how I feel about this card. A lot of people seem to think it's very good. I think it's decent. It fits really well with Cage Match Custodian. You play the Custodian on 2, you draw this, and then you play it. And this is Fiery War Axe. That's the card I'm thinking of. This is Fiery War Axe with an upside. So I don't think it's I don't think we want to underestimate this card. I think this card will be played. It'll probably be played in basically any Shaman deck that either cares about doing damage to your opponent's face or building a board, because it's a pretty good buff. Mm-hmm. I don't really see this being played in any sort of control Shaman. It's just not good enough for that.
That's fair.
Or Evolve Shaman.
With only 2 activations. And Evolve, you lose the benefit of it. So makes it a little bit tougher. Makes sense.
Yeah, I think it'll be played in any sort of aggro or token Shaman. But yeah, outside of that, I don't really see it seeing much play. But I think it'll be a pretty good card in those decks. So we'll see.
So Inara Stormcrash is a 5 mana legendary 4/5 that on your turn your hero has +2 attack and Wind Fury. This is the one you meant comboed with the previous card, right?
Yes, this combo is great with Storm Strike, with any sort of weapon that you already have equipped. Thinking like a curve along the lines of you go Cage Match Custodian, you draw your Whack-A-Knoll, you play the Whack-A-Knoll, and then maybe you coin this out or just play it on 5. And that's just so much damage that you're doing. Right. It's basically Doomhammer on a stick. Doomhammer's already like a pretty good card in Burn Shaman. And this is just Doomhammer with like no downside. This is also, you could compare this to Soul Shard Lapidary. It's basically a conditionless Soul Shard Lapidary. You don't need to shuffle a Soul Fragment in your deck to play this. Yeah, this card is so good. I think this card will single-handedly allow some sort of burn type shaman to be playable, and that's actually this is like the main card that's used in the shaman deck that I have theory crafted.
Nice.
Yeah, I think this card is going to see play in so many shaman decks on its own without comboing at all. It's great. Also, just thinking about how this would go in a game, maybe you play this on turn 7 or 8 comboed with your Rockbiter weapon or your Storm Strike to deal like 10 plus damage in one turn. And then this is an ongoing effect. So your opponent they're already going to be low on health, and they're going to need to figure out a way to both clear this minion and heal out of range of all of the other burn spells that you have in your hand, waiting to finish your opponent off.
Right. I definitely was trying an overload burn shaman here. It just felt a little bit short. You're right. This could give you that extra little boost, especially if you have it out and it's less scary to overload again on your next turn because you still have something else going from your face. So yeah, I'm excited to see how it plays out and how often it's used.
Yeah, I think the fact that it's an ongoing effect and not a battle cry just makes this card so much better.
Yeah. I think at 5 mana, 4/5, if it was just a battle cry, it just wouldn't be enough.
I think it would still be good as a battle cry, but I think the difference is it pushes this card from being good to great. The fact that it's an ongoing effect.
Yeah. Basically gives it taunt, right?
Yeah, and if this sticks and you get to swing again the following turn after playing this, you just win the game.
Right. And that is all that we have, but you had mentioned a theory craft. Here it is.
Yeah, so I've talked about a potential burn/aggro shaman deck being played, and I think it's going to look something like this. So the main sort of, I guess, feature to this deck would be running Lorekeeper Pulcult, so that you are guaranteed to draw Inara the following turn, and then you just draw into all these three mana spells that just do damage.
Nice.
So you draw into Inara, and then you draw either your weapon, your Storm Strike, your Lava Bursts. Basically, all those cards are going to be good alongside Inara. I don't think this is the final build of the deck by any means. It's going to be a challenge to even out the amount of minions versus how much actual spell damage, or like not spell damage, but burst spells you need to run. Because I do worry that this build will fall short in the mid game. If your opponent builds any sort of early game board, you might just lose if you don't have enough damage to go over the top. So it's going to be a matter of balancing the burn damage versus survivability. But most of these spells can be used as removal too. You don't need to go face with all of it.
Interesting. I like that it reflects everything that you've talked about too. That the cards that you said that were going to be good are in here. The ones that you didn't aren't. So
yeah, and the thing that excites me about Shaman is that the cards that I don't think are good, I think they have the potential to be good in future expansions. And we're also getting 35 more cards halfway through this expansion. So
right.
I want to say that they have a plan for the cards like Deathmatch Pavilion and maybe even the Pitmaster. I think there's a deck that those cards will fit in. They just don't exist at the moment. Because I think they are good cards. They just don't really work with what Shaman is doing right now.
Yeah, good, not great, right?
Yeah, and sort of similar to this deck, I was actually thinking earlier today that there might be some sort of control shaman out there that still uses Inara Stormcrasher and like double Rockbiter weapon as as like a win condition. Maybe you just want to survive until you draw all of all of these cards that combo with Inara, and then you just do one. Maybe there's a way to do around close to 30 damage with just Inara and a couple spells. I'm not sure. I haven't done the math, but I think the deck is there because Control Shaman is pretty good at surviving.
So did you submit this one to the Reddit contest for the Theory Crafters to play, or?
I did not. I didn't actually even know about that until it was too late. I made this deck a couple days after that happened, so unfortunately not.
Well, that just means that we'll get to see you play it first, so that's
exactly
even more exciting.
Exactly, so, I want to be the one.
So apart from this, any thoughts on Shaman as a whole? Any new archetypes that'll be creeping in, or more support for old ones that we've missed for a while, or just more of the same?
So I think this will allow for a couple. I don't know if I'd call them new, but I do think that I think this aggro burn Shaman is going to be pretty good. We have seen decks similar to this in the past, so I don't know if I'd call it new, but it will be new in recent times, I would say. Right. I think there's a Control Shaman out there, and it may or may not use Inara as a sort of win condition, because that seems like that's the main thing that is holding Control Shaman back at the moment. Control Shaman's very good at surviving, but it's kind of surviving just for the sake of surviving. There's no win condition in that deck. So maybe Inara gives it a win condition, and Control Shaman gets better. I think also the Cage Match Custodian just might be good enough to make Evolve Shaman playable. Because right now Evolve Shaman, has been in and out of the meta. It's never been that good, but it's always been a somewhat playable deck. Mm-hmm. And now we have a consistent way to draw the Evolve weapon. I don't remember what it's called, but yeah, so maybe the only weapon in your deck is the 4-mana weapon, or 5 mana. It's been a while since I've played that deck.
5 mana 4/2, right?
Yeah, you're picking up what I'm throwing down. Yeah. Maybe that's the only weapon you run in your deck, and now you have 4 chances to draw it, to play it on curve. Maybe that's good enough.
So what I'm hearing is that the Cage Match Custodian is going to be nerfed on day 3 and it's going to be 4 mana.
I hope not, but I mean, if it does get nerfed, then I guess that means I did my job, right?
Right. No, I think it's a good card, but I don't think that it's gonna. I mean, I don't think you can really change it to make it that much worse without breaking everything else. I think it's just a really solid card. So fingers.
Yeah, crossed. I think it's a good card. I think it's a pretty fair card because it's not a 2/3. It is a 2/2. That's not the most exciting stat line for 2 mana. But I think the upside is good enough that it's going to be used in pretty much every deck.
Fair enough. All right. Well, I really do appreciate you coming on the show and sharing your thoughts with us. I think you've changed my mind on a few things. I'll probably still try the Murlocs just because of a love of Murlocs, but definitely have me looking at the Shaman class as a whole a little bit differently, and I'm kind of excited to see it return to the meta. Any final thoughts?
Not other than I'm just excited to play some Shaman. It's been too long. I try and play Shaman this expansion, and everyone just says I'm memeing, and maybe I win a few games, but yeah, for the most part, I am memeing right now if I'm playing Shaman. I'm hoping this expansion will change that.
Fair enough. So how do people get a hold of you if they want to reach out and say, hey, your inspiration was right on, and I appreciate you sharing all this information? Or if they want to reach out and say, hey, you're dumb. All of those cards that you said were bad are really great and are tearing up the meta with the S tier decks. How do they get in touch with you?
So yeah, I stream most days on twitch.tv/rumhamhs. Feel free to come into my chat and call me an idiot. I'm ready for it. Let's have a discussion. You can also follow me on Twitter @rumhamhs. And yeah, I'd say those are the 2 main ways to get a hold of me. I'm always on Twitter, always on Twitch.
We hope you enjoyed your stay at the fair. Get your hand stamped on the way out for half off the admission to tomorrow's show. Thanks again to our producers, Menarch and Number